Welcome everybody. I think most of you that wanted to record this session have already been ticked with the box allowing to record. If not, just send Mark. Mark, can you wave up there? Mark with the dancing skeletons behind him. Mark is my co-host, chief technical advisor, guru, and the guy that puts all of the stuff together and posts it on a website for everybody to find. What we're talking about today is a topic that I've been asked about half a dozen times, but I'm not quite sure what people are asking me half a dozen times because it's got such a variety of what is needed or what is wanted. And the generality of it is from experienced callers, from new callers, and from brand new caller teachers, how do I make the dance interesting right from the start without getting bored? And it's not me getting bored, it's the dancers getting bored. It's how do I make a dance work with only 10 or 15 movements without boring the dancers and making it repetitive. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And to do that, we're going to go back through, whoops, am I in share screen there?
Yes.
That's the PowerPoint presentation? Good.
Looks like it.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go back through and just look at the basics of the mentality behind why things become boring and how to get past that from a caller's perspective, especially from a teaching perspective. So in order to do that, what we need to look at first is boring. Boring has a definition in depending on which book you read, but what it means is not interesting or tedious, or something that is so lacking of interest that it causes mental weariness. So if something's boring, it tends to fail to hold the interest or attention of those people that you're trying to grab a hold of, resulting in those people either becoming listless, impatient, or even sometimes disruptive intentionally or otherwise, just to break the monotony. And we've all seen that on a dance floor where you get, oh yeah, here we go again. Oh, he's going to do another walkthrough, and oh yeah, okay, and the mind just wanders, and then you get the coughing, and then you get the giggling, and then somebody starts talking as a joke, and so on and so forth. And you're back square. The angels start teaching another movement because they've already got the one you're teaching. Well, if that's happening, it means you're doing your job wrong. The opposite, but not quite the opposite of boring, is daunting. Okay, so by contrast, this is the other side of the coin. And that usually means complexity. And it's a means of complexity that's so important to understand that side of the equation, especially in relation to square dancing. If it's daunting, it's something that tends to overwhelm, intimidate, tend to make the subject of the influence, in other words, your dancer, less confident or even afraid. Thus, they're unlikely to deal with it, accept it, and they try and distance themselves from it. Now, if you mix that with complexity, which is when you have something that has a lot of different parts or things that are related to each other in a complicated way, that makes the whole thing difficult to understand or difficult to find an answer. And for square dancers, believe it or not, they want the answer. They want to get through the problem and get to the answer. In other words, get through the movement and get to the end state successfully. One of the biggest complaints that we get today from dancers and from callers is something that they all agree on. Nonstop learning and complexity with no end in sight is a problem. Yet, that's part of square dancing. And few, if any, want to work to change it. So let's look at this coin. Stop looking at it as a coin with two sides. One side boring, the other side daunting and complex. Okay, you've got the boring because you do have to repeat sequences. You do have to generate it in there. You do have to do the same things over and over and over. How many times a night do you call an allemande left? How many times a night do you call a right and left through? You do have to repeat. That doesn't make it boring. By the same token, you might be calling a spin the top or a spin chain through. That's a complex movement. It's got a lot of parts. Those two things have to work together. If they don't work together, the activity has no value. But for the activity to have value, it has to have something that's going to bind those two sides. And what binds those two sides to give a coin value is the edge. What binds the two sides in square dancing to give the value of what you're doing is the collar. So without a certain amount of inherent complexity, square dancing is boring. The current presentation of square dancing as a target level oriented activity is daunting. You know, we present, oh, new dancers, yeah, come on in. And we've got all these angels there. And by the way, in 20 weeks, you're going to be up here dancing with a plus club. Let's do a plus step. Heads, you know, pass the ocean, extend, relay the deucey. And they're going, what the hell was that? It's daunting. It scares the heck out of them. A good caller is going to find a way to ease that complexity, make it interesting, make it desirable, make it fun without it being daunting. So without that caller teacher in there to be the edge of that coin that holds the two parts together, the coin has no value. And quite frankly, square dancing has no value unless you find something to bind it together. So where do we go from here? The best way to start is get right back to the very basics and actually find out what is the definition of square dancing. And if you're interested in it, take the time to go and look up the definition of square dancing. It's a topic of many conflicting opinions and many philosophical arguments. And because of that, we're going to make it easy, and we're just going to go to 3 different dictionaries, and they all agreed on what the definition of square dancing is. Square dancing is a type of country dancing that starts with 4 facing couples facing one another in a square with steps and movements shouted out by a caller. That's the written definition. A clearer point says that it's a dance, that the dance itself consists of a number of figures whose description is called out by a non-dancing caller. That's the whole description there. Okay. You'll notice in the definition, nothing is said about boring, nothing is said about daunting, nothing is said about complexity. Those parameters that we put into the activity are usually done by callers going one way too far or too far the other way. And you have to ask your question, why do we keep doing that? So let's look at 3 simple facts about square dancing. Fact 1, callers will get bored much faster than dancers will get bored. You have to accept that. It's truth. You're going to get bored calling the same material over and over a lot faster than the ones on the floor dancing it are. Fact 2, dances do not have to be complex and intricate and technical to be fun and interesting, regardless of the level you're calling or the program you're calling. I should get away from using that term level. Regardless of the program, it doesn't have to be too complex and too technical. And fact 3, dancers will gravitate to whatever they like, not what the caller likes, but what the dancers like. And if the dancers don't like square dancing, they're going to gravitate to something they do like. Dancers, like any participant in a new activity, begin as learners, and like all people who commit themselves to learning something, there's a reason for it. There's also a structure for it. People like to learn something, they like to use it, they like to feel good about themselves. And when they master what they've learned, they want to use it and they want to add something new to it and repeat so that they can build and have fun with it. But they don't want to just keep learning and learning and learning, because the time they learn everything at the end, they've forgotten what they learned at the beginning. How often do you hear the fact that, oh yeah, I learned calculus in grade 6. Well, that's going back a while, but that's when we started learning basic calculus. How often do you use calculus in your ordinary life? The truth is, every day. You're not aware of it. But how often do you go, okay, if A plus B equals C and 2A plus 2B, we don't do it. But you forgot how to do it because you had to learn it. You had to pass the test. Great, move on. Let's go do something else. Let's learn to play basketball or whatever. Okay? When an activity is fun and successful, the people come back. Others see it and want to try it. People having fun and enjoying success and learning with pleasure is going to attract other people to the activity, regardless of what that activity is. If it's darts, if it's curling, if it's bowling, if it's baseball. If you see people having fun and enjoying themselves, you're going to want to play. If it's square dancing and people are having fun and enjoying themselves, you're going to want to play. It's really a simple equation. Success and fun is built upon fun and success. Okay. So what's not taught to square dance callers and what's not taught to square dance teachers anymore? And I do make the distinction between a caller and a caller teacher. I'm going to take a lesson from an old caller teacher's manual from 1983 on the importance of class. So if any of you have any of the older caller teacher's manual, there's a whole section there on called the importance of class, and it's all about that. I refer to this because since about 1990, as far as I could find, that whole bit about the importance of learning and how to deal with it has been taken out of the subsequent manuals. And it's also something that's been left out of way too much of the discussion. So let's start out with a simple premise. Nobody starts as a square dancer. Nobody. Nobody is a square dancer when they walk in the hall for the first time. Everybody that square dances as an activity has to learn. They have to start learning somewhere. To learn square dancing means you got to take classes or lessons. The purpose of any lesson is to learn something that is achievable and usable. Now, this one is something that's very, very important that everybody tends to forget. Not everyone achieves or succeeds. Guess what? It's okay to fail a dancer. It's okay to say, hey, you know, you really didn't get this with the rest of the class, but come on back. You know, we'll get it next time, or to give that little extra time. But some people just won't get it. It won't be for them. And this is the other important one. Classes and learning must have an end state that is usable. We tend to have forgotten that it's important to take classes and it's important to learn, but it's equally important that teaching takes you somewhere with a set of known parameters that mark success. I did it, I got it, I can use this. What you learn and achieve, i.e. the end state, has to be used properly, efficiently, and with success to have any meaning or any value whatsoever. Continuous classes and continuous learning without the gratification of use and success, without a marker that says, I'm here, has absolutely no meaning to any student in any activity. And we had this discussion a little bit earlier. Square dancing is one of the very, very, very few activities that you learn something and then you just got to keep learning and you never really get a chance to enjoy and use what you learn. The other thing that does that is elementary school, high school, where you learn specific things because somebody might want to become a doctor, somebody might want to become a mathematician. Everybody has to do it. We're not in that boat, but even high school has an end state. Square dancing doesn't seem to have that anymore. So learning time should be a fun time for new dancers and not an endless session of definitions and drills. Each night has to be filled with discovery and excitement. Each night should leave the dancers feeling successful and happy. This is especially true for new dancers because their first classes are their initial impression of the activity. They won't know many of the important and interesting aspects until you teach them during the course, and you have to teach them in a way that's going to make them want to enjoy that. If you make square dancing appear like it's difficult or it's work-like, there's a good chance you're going to lose your dancers. And if you present square dancing as, you know, oh yeah, you can come do this and, you know, you can get you dancing on the floor in 12 weeks and you'll be dancing at this program. And then in another 4 weeks, you'll be doing this. And another 4 weeks, you can do this. And another 4, and you're going, what? As opposed to, come on in, we'll teach you to dance. Have fun. Oh, wow, that was a really fun night. Can I come back next week? Big, big difference in the approach. If you present square dancing as a pleasure-filled couple pastime or a pleasure-filled pastime with other dancers as a social activity, it actually is a social activity. And if your enthusiasm's there, your enthusiasm is going to be contagious to them, and their enthusiasm is going to be contagious to others. The problem is we all say square dancing is fun, whereas what we should be doing is showing it, not saying it. Okay? Look at what we promote. The square dance community. I'm pointing to my screen here. I think you can't see my finger. Community. Wow, we got this big puzzle there. The square dance community. Teamwork. Oh, positive thing. The commitment. Oh yeah, you got a whole community and commitment. Instead, what we should be looking at is the bottom picture. Okay, we're giving the dancers the same goal-oriented fun, and they will build their own committed team. They will grow a strong community. It's not a mistake that the high sale points in the top puzzles are what we've been talking about for many, many years, and there's no people there. Those are just words, not actions and not experience. Whereas in the bottom one, you've actually got people wanting to do something, want to achieve something. Hey, we can put this puzzle together. It's not just puzzles and words. Okay. So what you need to do is you need to make your teaching and your calling an investment in both yourself and in your dancers. The more time you spend calling and teaching, the more you'll realize that the first few weeks with new dancers are the most vital period in the dancing experience. Teach well and teach in depth. That's the answer to it. Okay? Don't skip over important phases of the teaching process in order to rush into the club dancing with the idea that you'll come back later and clean up what you failed to do the first time around. Reteaching can be a problem. If you build bad habits at the beginning, bad habits get bigger. They don't get smaller. Your correct initial teaching is an investment for both you and for your dancers. And by taking great care in your teaching, you're going to find that it's going to pay big, big dividends later on. And it's extremely important that we use the correct and accurate terminology when we're teaching a figure. If you start small but correctly, let them learn, let them succeed, and use it successfully, what you're going to do is create a solid foundation for you and for the dancers to build upon. And the dancers are going to appreciate the ease at which you're doing it, the ease of which they're learning, and the support of their knowledge coupled with new information and you being there all works together. If you don't follow that process, then the simplest thing becomes difficult because they have nothing to support them, nothing to refer to, and each item or each movement becomes a standalone item to learn instead of one activity that blends from the other with a foundation of known to work from. Do not take shortcuts. Okay. Are there shortcuts to teaching? Absolutely. Okay. Are there shortcuts to getting there faster and get the dancers moving with wind in the face activity on the floor? Absolutely. Are there shortcuts to getting them doing that singing call that goes, wow? Absolutely. Avoid them like the plague. I can't stress that enough. It not only can, and this is about shortcuts, shortcuts not only can, but will most likely lead later on to a misunderstanding in a different boy-girl arrangement or a different setup or a different use. Use and interchange your commands such as ends, centers, boys, girls, in-facers, out-facers, all that other kind of stuff. But if you take that shortcut, what happens is somewhere later on, it's going to come back and bite you in the backside. Worse, it undermines your credibility as a caller teacher. This becomes even worse when you have to go and unteach something. Exponentially worse when they go and dance somewhere else and they say, well, that's not what my caller taught. And another caller teaches them how to do it properly. And consider how much worse it is even for a dancer that goes to a big dance and is going to be doing a movement and says, well, that's not how it's done. We've all heard the story of, you can't do heads face grand square. No, it's sides face grand square. And then another dancer will tell them that their caller's teaching them wrong. All of that reflects on you. I like to be able to say, when I say to my dancers, they're ready to go out and dance a mainstream dance, they can dance the entire mainstream program. They're going to make mistakes, but they're going to have fun. They're going to know how to adapt, and they're going to learn how to accept, different things. But there's nothing worse than being told you're wrong, your caller's teaching you wrong. At the same time, the teaching phase, especially right at the beginning, can be the most rewarding part about being a caller. In basic learning, as with all activities, a well-equipped caller and a well-equipped teacher is the most important factor in the equation. I say that because, believe it or not, the students are not the most important factor in teaching. The students learn what they're taught. The students learn how they're taught. What they taught becomes theirs, and they become the most important part of the dancing phase. But the teacher is the most important factor in that equation. And a caller only has very few short weeks to sell square dancing. That's not a few short weeks to teach the class, but to sell the activity and his or her own specific, peculiar, or wow brand of entertainment. So if you do it right the first time, as the graphic shows, you're going to be a magnet for new customers and others will come there. And what's really, really interesting is if you do it right the first time and you have a group and you're able to do that, if it's that good, people will wait to come and do it next time. You don't have to keep starting over every 2 weeks and drive your learners away, because they're going to want to bring others in. They're going to want to go and do it again because they had such a good time. So what does it take to do this? Well, it takes what it takes to be a caller. I put courage and hard work. Those are the two things that it takes. It takes a lot of courage to be a teacher. It takes a lot of courage to be a caller, and it takes a lot of courage to be a leader. And as a square dance caller, generally you're a teacher, you're a caller, and you're a leader. But believe me, it's well worth the effort. This will work for all of you most of the time. It'll work for most of you. And it will only work if you keep it interesting for your dancers each and every night. If you keep it simple and fun. I don't mean you can't do a variation of spin the top with 4 girls or 4 boys and whatnot. But you don't want to throw 800,000 things at them, or throw something so complex. We're going to look at spin, chain, and exchange the gears tonight. Yeah, you just graduated mainstream, but we're going to look at this movement, and we're going to look at it from an inverted quarter diamond formation with phantom exponents on blah, 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 blah. I'm just making crap up now. But that's what some callers do, because, it's a wow piece of choreography that they saw somewhere and it was fun to dance. They can dance it, but your dancers can't. It takes hard work to learn not only what to call, but how to call it. And as Chris Stacy pointed out in his session a while back, it's a lot harder work to learn how to teach it and call it properly. Learning what I can call, how I can call it, but how I should call it and why I should not call it is a lot of hard work. It takes even more work to sell it. And I'm talking about selling square dancing, not a movement, selling square dancing as an activity, by keeping it fun, keeping it successful, keeping it challenging, but making sure it's not daunting. And that takes 2 things, practice and time. And when you do it, they come together. That's their beginning. That's how they start. They stay together because they're making progress and they're having fun doing it. Working together as a team, they're building their own brand of success and community. And you notice it's their beginning, it's their progress, it's their success. You're not in that equation. Your part of the equation is to give them all the tools they need for that. You stand alone making that happen. So, it's enough theory. From here, what we're going to look at is what we do to keep it interesting and fun without being overly repetitive and boring. So we're just going to go through this hypothetical class here. Okay. I want to really, really stress, this is not an SSD program. This is not a condensed teaching order program. This is not a Collar Lab program of 2 years to graduate basic. It's not a Collar Lab program of 1 year to graduate basic and mainstream. It's not a community dance program. It's not any one of 6 different, let's get the dancers on the floor programs that are out there. Administrator is entering the room. Okay, we've got an administrator entering. That's cool. What it is just a hypothetical class of getting a bunch of dancers. Okay, so we're going to start off. We've got a whole bunch of people in the room that have been there, and we're going to start off just getting them moving, getting them used to the music, putting a piece of music on, you know, getting them all on the floor, introducing boy on the left, girl on the right. Hey, great, say hi. Everybody, all join hands, great. Walk to the left, shuffle the beat, walk to the beat, shuffle the feet, choo, 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 circle left, circle right, go up to the middle with a great big yell. Let him yell, let him get that out. Back up, everybody face your partner. Quick do-si-do, you know, pass right shoulder, slide back to back up and look at him. Well done. Turn around, do that with the girl behind you, you know, corner dose, you know, all of these other kinds of things that you can do, and you all have your own techniques and your own ways of doing it. You might do a ladies in, men sachet, men in, ladies sachet. Alaman left, there's your partner. Shake right hand, right and left hand, all the way around. Say hi to everybody until you get back to your partner. You know, don't worry about it. It's 5 people. On the 5th one, you're back with your partner. A weave the ring, no hands. Alaman left, all the boys into the middle, right hand star, left hand star. Girls, maybe a passer, face your partner. You know, pass through, turn around, look at your partner, pass through. Alaman left. All of these little things like that. You can do all of that, everything that's on there, in about 6 minutes. 6 to 8 minutes. The worst thing you can do is get everybody up on the floor and you've got them there for 25 minutes and you're teaching them left, right, inside out, upside down, backwards, center, and for 25 minutes, this is as far as they got. 6 minutes. Get them a break. Let them have fun. Let them have that flush of success. Let them, wow, that was pretty cool. Then after your break, you come back. Now we're going to introduce them to the square. This will take about another 4 to 6 minutes. Okay? You introduce the corners, you introduce the partners, and you're going to go back. Everything that you've done, you're going to use. The movements that are here in red, this is what I'm going to introduce. Everything else you've already done in the big circle. And you've probably done that in a fun night or an exposure night and this kind of stuff. So this is the premise we're working on right now. You know, there's your corner, there's your partner, circle left, lady center, men sachet, men center, girl sachet, circle left, men make a right hand start, pass the partner, find the corner, Alaman left, right and left grand, all the way around. Great. Promenade home. We're back. That's our review. Now we're going to teach the heads up to the middle. Heads pass through. Okay. And now we teach a courtesy turn. And then we repeat it. Heads promenade, down the middle, pass through, courtesy turn, and so on and so forth. You know, Alaman left your corner, do side your partner, men star left, turn partner right, all the way around, etc., right and left grand, promenade home. They've got success. I repeated it a few times. Then I do a singing call. Yes, I do singing calls on the very first night. It's not all patter calls. It's not all that, you know. And what you use has to work for you. Whatever program you're using, I spelled circle wrong. Whatever program you're using is what you have to use to work for you, but you have to make sure that it works for the dancers. So you can do circle left, Alaman left your corner, do side do your partner, men star left, turn your partner right arm turn, back to the corner, Alaman left, do side do your partner, all promenade. If you haven't taught a swing yet, you know, you may have, you may not have, I don't know. And then you have a figure. My first figure that I use on my singing call does not change partners. Okay, you can, but you don't have to. I choose not to for the first one because I want them to have confidence. Okay, but I make sure that I'm going to use what I taught them. Down the middle, promenade halfway, circle half, you get back home. I didn't do a pass through courtesy turn there. Sides promenade halfway, down the middle, pass through and courtesy turn. And then it goes to join hands, circle left, men star right, Alaman left your corner, promenade home. The reason I only do it once there is because everyone's going to get to do it, but it ends with a circle left. They have that feeling of, oh, wow, I did that. That's that brand new movement I did, and I got it right. And even if they didn't and they had to fudge it, they're going to end up facing back into the center of the square, and they'll get it right the next time, but they're not going to feel like they got it too far wrong. Next tip. Okay. Let's just say on this one, I'm going to teach the ladies chain family. I go through the same format, everything they've done, pass through and courtesy turn, sides, promenade halfway, pass through and courtesy turn. I'm going to teach the ladies, let's have the head ladies. You've done the right and left. Head ladies, reach in, shake right hands, give a right pull by to the opposite man. Boys, reach in with your left hand and courtesy turn her all the way around the face back in. That's a head ladies chain. Head ladies chain back home, side ladies chain, side ladies chain back home. You know, then I can do head ladies chain, side ladies chain. All four ladies, you're going to go in, remember that right hand star, make a right hand star, turn it until you get back to your original partner. Way better. Good. Get ready, boys. If you're not there, ladies, you got your chance to pat them on the head like a puppy. Four ladies chain, straight back to your partner. Boys, courtesy turn, hand above the belt, Barry, you know, that kind of stuff. Whatever you want to do that's going to make it fun for them. But what have I actually taught here? They already know how to do the pull by. They already know how to do the courtesy turn. I've introduced a fraction called 3/4. That's really the only thing new that's been introduced here. And I can continue off with all sorts of different variations, and yet everything is new to them, and yet they've all got it in their heads how to do it. They know how to do the forward and back. They know how to do the pass-through courtesy turn. They know how to do now the ladies chain, everything else they've got. So now I'm going to use it in the singing call, and look at the structure of the singing call. Heads, not the opener break. I've done the ladies center, men's sachet, just for a little bit of variation, and they've done that. Heads promenade half, heads pass through and courtesy turn. I could do a head ladies chain here, but I didn't. I chose a side ladies chain just to get the sides act. Side ladies chain. head ladies chain. And now I did ladies chain 3/4. 1, 2, 3, keep your corner and promenade home with the new girl. I'm now introducing something successfully that they can do, reinforcing the ladies chain, reinforcing the 3/4 fraction, and all of that kind of stuff. And the dancers will do it very, very simply. You know, if you're wondering what that looks like, let's have a look. Just take a quick look here on tabulations. Is it Alt Tab, I think? Alt Tab. Huh. That's not working. Can you see my tabulation screen? Is anybody still out there?
Yep.
You've got it now.
You can see the tabulation screen?
Yes.
Okay, so everything there, we've looked at a pass through, we've looked at a courtesy turn, we've looked at a right hand pull by, we've looked at a ladies chain, head ladies, side ladies, all 4 ladies chain, and a ladies chain 3/4. This is the flow in a pattern. We've got the heads promenade halfway, down the middle, pass through with a courtesy turn. I'll repeat it for the sides. Changing that order, sides, heads is going to feel different for them. And the sides back away. Head ladies chain. Okay, there's their new movement. Hard to fail. Side ladies chain. There's their new movement. Hard to fail. All 4 ladies chain across. Great. All 4 ladies chain 3/4. 1, 2, turn number 3. All 4 ladies chain 3/4. 1, 2, turn number 3. All 4 ladies chain straight back home to the partner. Wow, there's a lot of turning in there. It's still less turning than the teacup chain. Alaman left, or the circle left, the Alaman. Wow, that was a long circle left. Right and left grand, because you always need that right and left grand just to make it feel good. And promenade home. At this level, I do not want to resolve to home, but I will resolve to home on the first night sometimes, depending on how well the dancers do. It's a judgment call that you as a caller have to make. Tab. Is the PowerPoint back up?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, now here's where I like to do it this way. Some callers do, some callers don't. You have to find what works for you. But in the 4th tip, I get him into a Sicilian circle. This is on the first night of dancing. It's not all squares. You know, we've done a big circle movement. Now we're going to do something. And throughout my dances, I like to use a Sicilian circle as a warm-up almost each and every night because it's the perfect thing for reviewing dancing. You can come in the hall. If you got a dancer late, they can join in at any time. Okay. So I may do, you know, couples do-si-do, one in front of the other. Okay. Because you got 2 couples facing. Face your partner. Do-si-do your partner. Face the other one. Do-si-do again. Once and a half. In other words, just pass her. Yeah, that's good. Courtesy turn. Pass through. Move to the next. That's the introduction. I'm moving to the next. Right pull by and courtesy turn the girl beside you. Do a do-si-do. Make a right-hand star one time around. Make a left-hand star one time around. We've done the stars, but this is the first time they're doing the stars as couples. But it's exactly the same star, and one time around makes it comfortable for them. Now I'm going to teach a right and left through, but if you notice up there, I've already done a right-hand pull by, courtesy turn the girl beside you. And I do it in the Sicilian circle because they're generally spread far enough apart that they're not going to move to the next automatically or give a right pull by. If you did head star through, right and left through, they're going to want to go to the sides immediately. So I teach a right and left through, I go back and I teach the ladies chain and so on and so on and so forth. Okay, and I just keep on going. A right and left through, full turn to the 2 behind you. Just keep on turning. Move to the next. That's just a little bit of fun. They pick it up very easy. You're tuning them into receiving directional calling. Ladies chain, right hand star, left hand star, pass through, move to the next in your own 4. Circle left 3/4. They've done the circle left. Now I've got them in a different direction. I got a circle on the outside and a circle on the inside. Not a problem. Do-si-do, pass through, courtesy turn, ladies chain them back. We're now looking at doing these things from one direction to the next direction, but it's all stuff they know. It's all stuff they've done over and over again. A right and left through, but just the inside circle do a full turn. I'm getting ready to wind up now. I've got 2 circles. Both circles join hands, circle left. Alum and left, right and left grand. Say hi to everybody in your big circle all the way around. Promenade when you get your partner, promenade or give her a swing or whatever, and promenade to a chair or promenade to wherever to take a break. Well done, everybody. You know, however you want to do that. But again, it's not going to be a big long thing. It's going to be a confirmation of everything they know, everything they have learned so far, plus the movement right and left through, which is a combination of things that they already know. In the 5th tip, we're going to get back into squares. Now you notice in that last tip, I said, make a right-hand star in the Sicilian circle 1 time around. That's what's being introduced here, something they already know. And all of this stuff they already know. They already dance. They dance it successfully. They dance it very, very easy. So on this, let's go to Alt-Tab, Alt-Tab. Okay, I just want to clarify, I cannot figure out how to make a right-hand star. So that's why it says make a right-hand star to the corner, and I've got this after it. But this is all stuff that they've done comfortably, right and left through, back away, sides, forward and back. I like to use a do-si-do as a break. I like to use a forward and back as a break. I'll get them to promenade, down the middle with a right and left through, and back away, head ladies chain. Now let's have all 4 ladies chain back to the partner. Heads go into the middle, make a right-hand star. Exactly 1 time around, there it is, and there's the corner. Halaman left, right and left grand, and so on and so forth. Don't worry about that stop and go in the circle left 3/4, etc. It just doesn't do a right-hand star. So, and we can do all of this stuff. The limitations in the pattern with that much material is entirely up to you. You have so much material that you can use there that it is virtually impossible to get bored as a dancer. You're going to be doing it heads, you're going to be sides, you're going to be changing heads and sides. And from that point, the limitation on the pattern is entirely up to you. The secret, though, is just to keep it simple. Use your prompts and your directions as needed. There's nothing wrong with directional calling. There's nothing wrong with telling them where to go. Prompt them for success. Let them win. And then next time, give them half the prompt. And the next time, they may not even need the prompt. The idea, though, is to let them dance and use what they know to build upon and dance what they know. If you do that, they're not going to get bored. You may think they will, but that's in your mind. That's not in their mind. What's in their mind is they're dancing. It's all new to them, and they're having fun. Okay. And like the rest, you've got a singing call. Give it to them. You've got a standard single, circle left, Alaman left, turn partner right, men star left. Oh, that's a right-hand turn all the way around, men star left, great. Turn partner right again, Alaman left your corner, dosa, you know, just a slight variation on it, but it makes a difference. And then if we do in our singing call pattern, or sorry, in our singing call figure, what's that look like? Alt. Yeah. We're going to start with the 4 ladies chain 3/4. They've got that. Great. Heads, circle left, 3/4. Oh, wait a minute. Look at that. Pass through. Everybody, circle 4, 3/4. Now we're doing something different that we've done in our pattern, but we're working in lines. But there's no new movements. The only thing new in here is instead of having head couples and side couples standing there that I know I got to work between them, I've got everybody working facing the head walls. And when I change that to sides, I've got everybody working chasing the side walls. But it's something that they know, that they have learned, that they're confident with, that they're comfortable with, they can do the movements. All I've done is not add complexity by teaching more movements. I've taken the movements that they know and I've built on them, and I've given it to them differently. The difference in this case is not looking at side walls, we're looking at head walls for the side couples and vice versa. That's the only complexity that's built into that. Okay, so we're gonna just take a couple minutes. If you've got a pen and paper, there's what, 16 movements? There's 16 movements for you to look. If you want to quickly jot them down, this is the practical exercise. We'll get into this after when we finish the presentation. But on those movements, you can have a lot of room for variety and play. So let's just say this is probably the second night or the third night, depending on which program you have. When I mentioned those 6 programs, I looked at 4 of them, not including the community dance program. Depending on which list you're on, there's 26 movements that your dancers are going to be done by the end of the second night, depending on which list you're on. Any combination of those 26 movements. That includes circle left, do side do, Alaman left, right and left grand, weave the ring. So when we take that off, there's really 10 movements on there, and they're pretty simple movements, all things considered. And that gives you a lot of room for variety and a lot of room for play. Okay, so before I go into the choreography, let's open up just what I presented there for discussion. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of controversy about the topic. At least I hope there is, because controversy is good, because we definitely need to change how we've been doing this over the years. We have some very excellent callers, very successful callers. We have callers that are absolutely phenomenal callers at a dance, but could not teach a class if their life depended on them. And we've got callers that have taken over classes that were very, very successful clubs, and they folded because the presentation was wrong, or they wanted to call and show how good they were. It's not about us as callers, it's about dancers. All we are is that edge of the coin to bind the things together. So let's open up the floor quickly. Anybody have any comments, queries, points? And then we'll start looking at some choreography.
Mel, I sent you a message while you were talking. I've done quite a lot of teaching over the years, and I keep it really, really simple. I don't go into nearly as much detail as you have been suggesting. I start off with the dancers in a square, and all I tell them to start with is that the lady on the boy's right-hand side is your partner, and the lady on your left-hand side is somebody else's partner. And then I say, all join hands, circle to the left, all the way around until you get back to where you started from, and we call that home position. Let's go the other way. Everybody circle to the right, go the other way back.
Yep.
Stop when you get back to where you started from. That's home position. And then I'll say, everybody circle to the left, drop your hands, go single file. Everybody put a right hand into the middle, make a right hand star. Reverse back, make a left hand star, go all the way around and stop where you started from. This is home position, remember. And then I'll stop and I'll say, okay, and the couples facing me and the couples with their backs to me are head couples. Just the head couples go up to the middle and back. Circle to the left, once around. Stop when you get back home again, back out. The other couples in the square are called the side couples. Side couples step into the middle and join hands, circle to the left, once around. Stop when you get back home.
Absolutely, Brian. I do exactly the same. I wasn't going into the minutia details of it. What I would, and you're absolutely correct. Every caller is going to have a different thing. Probably a couple of the questions that people are going to, I just noticed in the chat, there was a number of private questions to me because I can't see the chat or the screen while I was talking there. That's a lot of material for one first night. That came up about 4 or 5 times. Yes, it is. This is just working on the assumption. It's actually less material that's on some of the programs. It's less material that's on the SSD program as an example and all that, but it's more than on others. It's not a lot. Looking at it from perspective, many callers, what they'll do is one or two open houses, or they may have done a couple of presentations in the park where they got people moving. A lot of this material is already familiar to most people in general, like an Alaman left and a do-si-do, very quick talk throughs. What you're saying, Brian, introducing the square, that's all I just said was introducing the square. I do mine very much the same way you do as to who is where and what's home, etc. Different
I
callers
find
have.
there are a lot of figures that we can do that don't need to be taught. Certainly not from the start, like circle to the left. I mean, you can get into the more minute details of which way you should be facing and how you should be holding your hands and that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
But to start with, I just say everybody join hands and circle to the left, and they can all do that because it's plain everyday English.
That's what I do too. And that's where I get to walk to the beat and shuffle your feet, or and you get them going. Another comment that came up is many dancers learn by rote. It's probably exception that some will learn by definition. Is it placing too high a demand on the dancers that they know everything about a call? I'm saying no and yes. When I said make sure you teach the call properly and you teach the call using the right terminology, that does not mean teach them every variation immediately inside out, upside down, and backwards. What that means is if you're going to teach them Alaman left, you teach them how to do an Alaman left. We're not going to teach them how to do an Alaman left from lines facing out. We're not going to teach them how to do an Alaman left from inverted lines or from T-bones or things like that. But we are going to teach them how to do an Alaman left. If we're going to teach them how to do a movement, we're going to use the proper terms. We're not going to take shortcuts. My favorite movement for the detriment of square dancing in taking shortcuts is the movement recycle. I use that because it is the most blatant classic example of poor teaching. Girls, you turn back, wheel and deal. How many times was that taught as recycle? That's how I was taught recycle the first time. There's no boy or girl in a recycle. There's an end and a center. But what we do is we teach recycle that way, then we have to go back and we have to unteach it, and then we have to reteach it. Whereas had we taught it right the first time, it would have been correct. If we only taught it with boys on the outside from a standard right hand wave, but if we taught it correctly, we've taught ends do this, centers do that. That's what I was talking about when I was saying teach it right the first time. Doesn't mean use everything. You have to build on what they know. Teach them how to do a right pull by properly, where to stop. Teach them how to do a courtesy turn, where to stop. Teach them how to put those together, where to stop. As Brian was saying, teach them a lot of this stuff is already intuitive with them. And if you're presenting confidently, you're presenting with them having fun and moving, they're going to pick up most of this. 90% of the basic stuff they're going to do quite successfully. I know you've been very successful at that. I've heard a lot of your open dances, Brian, where you do a lot of the similar stuff at one night stands or just the party nights where non-dancers, exactly the same format, and it works. There's another comment here. This is actually one of yours. Several suggestions for an alternate name to this activity of ours. Team dancing, pattern dancing. There's been a lot of names come out for it. I actually like square dancing because it is known, it's traditional, it's good, but there's nothing wrong with the name. What we need to do is rebrand the image. And I will look at, for instance, I don't know, well, the Americans as a good example, I'll use the term football. Well, let's rebrand football. We rebranded it American football. Then, well, wait a minute, Canadian football is harder than American football because you got longer to go. Now it's gridiron, but for the rest of the world, football is soccer. Really doesn't matter what we call it. Everybody will identify it. They'll identify with the terms, but it's the fun of the game. Well, square dancing has a name. It's a known name. What we need to do is rebrand the perception of the activity. But if a new name works, great. You need to this was a direction. You need to rename yourself with your own name. That was I couldn't understand the comment, but that was about people in the room. I guess some people signed in with different names or administrators, whatnot. Someone said on the second tip, put them in a square about the third time they promenade home. You can see it in their eyes. That's when the light switches on. That's actually, and it's an absolutely brilliant comment, and you're absolutely correct. You've done the big circle. You've done the second tip where you've actually introduced them to square. You moved them around, but now you're doing allemande left, right and left grand, promenade home. And they do that the first time, the second time, the third time, and suddenly the lights switch on. I'm square dancing. Wow, I'm having fun. Absolutely brilliant comment. And you're absolutely correct. They're dancers when they decide they're square dancers. And that light comes on maybe at a different point for everybody, but you're right. It's usually about the partway through the second tip on that second or third promenade, the lights switch on. Another comment, no way I would try and teach all those figures on the first night. I probably would. Depends on how you set up. But that being said, all the clubs that I've called for, we usually have 3 introductory nights. So most of this stuff has already been done to them. This is my first class night. And a lot of the things like the circle left, circle right, most of it comes. I've seen brand new callers and brand new club dancers. Well, they'll do this and they'll also introduce a grand square on the first night. They'll also introduce a star through or a slide through on the first night and a bend the line because it gives them material to use. As I said at the beginning, this is not advocating an SSD program. This is not advocating a teaching order. This is not advocating any specific program. Every single caller is going to find a program that works for them. Every single caller is going to find their own mechanism for entertaining, for building the fun, for exciting the dancers and keeping them successful. If you're one of those callers that is able to get the dancers through basic and mainstream successfully in, 30 weeks, I applaud you. I can't do it. If you're one of those that can get them through basic and mainstream successfully in 12 weeks, I applaud you. I can't do it. But if you can, and your dancers like it, and that's what they want, and they enjoy it, and they're coming back and bringing their friends, then you're doing something right. If you take 2 years to get through basic 1, and they're bringing their friends and coming back and your hall's full, I applaud you because you're doing it right. It doesn't matter what program you're doing. It's all about the dancers. Kip Garvey, is that you?
Yeah, that's him. He was the administrator.
Ah, hi, Kip. Says from Kip, teach them what they need to know and what you expect them to do and revisit it to broaden their understanding. Absolutely. You'll notice in that program, as it went through, everything was geared to, here's what you know, we're going to dance what you know, we're going to use what you know, and now we're going to add one little thing onto that. We've done a pull by, we've done a courtesy turn, now we're going to do a right and left through. It's stuff you know that makes stuff you don't know known. And taking the known and putting it together for success is what square dancing is. Square dancers cannot learn a single square dance movement in isolation. It does not work. It has to be mixed and matched and have something, a start point, an end point, and it has to go somewhere. The same with classes. It has to have a start point, it has to have an end point, and it has to go somewhere. So if you keep that in mind, that's where we go. Okay, and Mark, were there any more comments to you?
No, I didn't get any. They sent them all to you.
Okay. Oh, I got one new message here. John, you have a question, yes? You're muted, John.
Yeah, I had to get the mute off. I was thinking there with that bit with the team, when you went with your team dance, for a good thing for the first nighter would be come alone, bring a partner, if possible, bring another couple, and let's have a team, have a good time.
Absolutely. I wasn't going into the advertising, but you're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Party nights are good nights if you can get a group of people that want to get together. But I think the John that I had a question was John Juergens. Is that correct, John?
I do, yes.
Go ahead.
So I've been to many lessons and I've listened to the caller. And just how much explaining should you do versus how much should you let them dance to find out if they can grasp it right off the get-go? Sometimes I think we've been over-explained and demonstrated the move with a lot of flair and pomp and circumstances, where sometimes I think it's easier if he just calls it and let's see what happens. What do you think about that?
If you have to spend as much time explaining as you do dancing, you're doing it wrong. If I'm going to teach my dancers Alaman left, for example, okay, I've already taught them who the partner is. I've already taught who the corner is. I might say, face your corner, shake left hands, slide your hand up just to the forearm. Now you're going to turn her all the way around, let go and step back face to face with your partner. Go. Left arm turn all the way around back to partner. That's it. That's going to be the only teach. Then while they're dancing, circle left, Alaman left. That's a left arm turn all the way around back to the partner. Do it o-side-o. But if I'm there, I say, okay, I want you to turn 96 degrees, boys to the left, girls to the right. You're going to be looking at original corner. Take your left hand adjacent to the forearm here. You're going to turn 180 degrees around and you're going to release it. And I'm getting into this long technical explanation. My dancers are going to go, oh my God, what the hell have I got into? This is like grade 6 algebra all over again. Bye. I'll never use this in real life. And they won't. They'll stick it out the first night. Come up, shake your hand, say, thank you, that was fun. And you'll know exactly you did it wrong the next time your class opens because they're not going to be there.
I always feel people are there to dance. Get them dancing as quickly as you can with the least amount of explanation that you need.
Absolutely. Okay, are there any more comments, or I'll go back to the choreography that we were just looking at?
Betsy's got something there.
Where, oh, hi, Betsy. Sorry,
Hi.
I can't see raised hands. There's a lot of people there.
Yep.
You have to speak up.
Okay, well, I was going to add a couple things for one night parties or square dance parties, and that is I don't even worry when they're setting up in a circle. I'll set up in a big circle, assuming the room will hold the dancers, but I don't even worry about who's on which side. I'll have everybody join hands and circle left because I'm in an English-speaking country and they can follow those directions. Then I'll have them circle right. And then I'll have them go single file and then have the person dancing the boy move into the middle and stand side by side with your partner. And I get them with a gentleman on the left and the lady on the right without ever talking about left and right.
Yep.
Because left and right is scary for a lot of people. Some people don't know their left from their right and they feel stupid.
And that really reinforces what I was saying right at the beginning. You're using that on your party nights, which is absolutely fantastic. I'm talking specifically about classes, but I made that point right at the beginning. Use terms like inside, outside, left, right, centers, ends. Use them properly. You're right at the very, very beginning. All join hands, make a circle. Who cares where? Promenading to the right, single file, whichever you're doing, all the boys or those dancing as boys, move to the inside. You've now introduced the concept of inside and outside. It's part of their terminology, and I'll bet you use it more often as you go inside, outside, ends, and centers than you do boys and girls, but you use boys and girls as well, don't you?
Yep.
Absolutely.
I was laughing because I remember a beginner party I did for a bunch of kids, and the boy they didn't want to dance with persons of the opposite gender, so we had boy couples and girl couples, and to designate for that, for some reason that time I used innies and outies for the people promenading on the inside and people promenading on the outside, which made sense to me. They thought it was referred to their belly buttons. And some of them actually changed which side they were on so that they would correspond with what they had.
Different.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm just gonna go back to my share screen here for a second.
Yes.
Mel, there's just one
Sorry,
thing.
go ahead, Brian.
Move on. Just a little further to the teaching. As I said, I try and teach as little as I possibly can, but keep it fun and keep them dancing. And once they've done the star patterns, like everybody make a right-hand star or everybody make a left-hand star, I'll then have head couples. Once I've taught the head couples, make a right-hand star or left-hand star, and not do anything fancy out of it. Just star by the right once around, come back and square your set again, back to your home position. And then
Absolutely.
my first foray into lines is just to call something like head couples or side couples, face your partner, back up and make a line of 4. Lines up to the middle and back. Just the center 4, do a do-si-do straight ahead. Just the end 4, do-si-do. Center 4, make a right-hand star once around. Come back to your place in the line. End ladies on the diagonal, do a do-si-do, back to back. And they sort of laugh about it. And then I'll say, end boys on the diagonal, ready? End boys, run to the middle, just shake hands with each other. Now back up to your home position again. And then to get out of it, all you got to do is say, join hands, circle to the left.
Yeah. What's really nice about that is when you look at that, that's your basic contra flow. It's a standard flow, establishing a line and doing a contra type organization that is really, really easy and understandable to follow. You've got the 2 end ladies. There are only 2 end ladies. You've got, up to the middle, do a do-si on the diagonal. It's very, very easy to follow. And what you've done there is you've introduced the concept of a line. You've introduced the concept of ends and centers. You've introduced the concept of diagonal. And you've introduced all of this stuff. And you can do this on a first night. You can do this on a party night. You can do this. I mean, used to be your first night at the party night was heel and toe polka, the Irish washerwoman, and a few other things. Introduction to square dancing. You never even got to square dance. It was just all mixers and all this other kind of stuff, or the patty cake polka and all that. I personally stay away from all of those when I do a first night stand. Some people it works, but as I was saying, and I love that, Brian, because it really stresses that each caller finds their method that works for them. But their method is not about them. Their method is about the dancers. But the key is what you're doing is you're selling the activity and you're selling your brand of entertainment that makes this activity worthwhile, that makes them want to say, hey, that Brian Hotchkiss is really good. I'm going to go and see, what that Mike Sikorsky fellow's like. That Mike Sikorsky is pretty good too. We'll go and dance with them. We're going to go see what that Mel Wilkerson fellow's like. Oh, geez, I don't like that Canadian accent. I'm not going to go and dance to that. I can't understand that. He doesn't speak Australian. It's all of those kinds of things that will come out, and dancers will go and gravitate to what they want. Now, if you're presenting well, it doesn't really matter. The material that you presented there, Brian. Oh, look at that. Take your corner. Now I've got half sashayed and I've got a standard couple, right? And I've got ends and centers and I'm working lines on a diagonal. And, that sounds really, really complex stuff. It's not. We make it complex because we try to over-explain it. I've seen, Brian, you did something similar. You made a similar comment at one of the callers' workshops here. It took about 30 seconds to get the dancers doing something like that, and they're all moving. And they laugh because girls do a do-si-do. The boys go up to the middle and shake hands. Oh, thank God, just that quick release. That's all it takes.
If you want to really stretch it out, once you've taught them the do-si-do, you can get as lines of 4. Do a do-si-do. Everybody slide all the way to the left, then slide to the right, back up again.
So I put a bunch of movements up there, and these are just a couple of little sequences. You see, and this is a lot of where this session actually came from. All of the movements that are used in that list that I gave are ones that were asked to me specifically by another caller that's teaching a new class. This is all my dancers need, or all my dancers know how to do, but I can't get any material for it. I cannot say this enough, especially for new callers teaching a class for the first time. Chances are there are no modules written for you. On the SSD program, if you're going to use that, there are modules written, but there's not enough to fill in an entire night unless you're going to repeat them over and over and over again. Even if you do that, the dancers are not going to get bored. You're going to get bored. And if you get bored, that's going to come across to the dancers. But if you've got limitations on your choreography, it's up to you to start learning how to use your choreography and make it interesting. It doesn't have to be hard. Use what they know. Here's an example just of those. You've got, what happened here? Let's speed that up a bit. dive through, centers, pass through, star through, pass through, bend the line, star through, dive through, centers, pass through, Alaman left, right and left grand, and bang, they're home.
Quick.
I'm just going through it very, very quickly, just to show you that even with those movements there, okay, and you've got breaks that you can use. You know, your circle left, ladies in, men's sachet, all those big circle movements to have them fun and just get them going. But you can do all sorts of different things. You can start with this half sachet, star through, U-turn back. I think that's a bit too fast, isn't it? Let's put that to normal again. What the heck just happened here? There we go. Okay, so start with the heads half sachet. We've already done that. Star through. Oh, look, we got there differently. Pass through and turn around. Here's after the bend the line, I do a forward and back, or before I do a forward and back. Star through, dive through, centers pass through, Alaman left, right and left grand. And, you know, it could be a full promenade. It could be all sorts of different things. Let's steal a page off of what you just did there, Brian, sort of. Okay, and this is, again, with only those movements that the caller gave me from their class. Again, we started with a half sachet, star through, I'm facing the outside. Pass through, turner, that's the same sequence. Try this one. Okay. Pass through and wheel around instead of a right and left through. Follow it with a half sachet. It flows. Star through. A do-si-do because I don't like doing star through, star through, star through. Pass through. Wheel around with a half sachet. It flows. Do another half sachet. Oh, that's different. Star through. Alaman left your corner. A bit awkward. You can do a pass through and Alaman left if you're ready for it, but you can do a star through, a do-si-do. Same girl, Alaman left. All of those other kinds of things. But this is only with what was already presented. Half sachet is a movement that many callers, especially new ones, once they've learned it, they tend to shy away from it unless they're trying to set up a specific movement. We'll use it as a foundation to set things up. It really makes the dance feel different for the dancers, and it takes them back, you know, pass through, U-turn back. Wow, normalizes so quickly. And all of this stuff happens very, very, very quickly. Alt-Tab. So these are just some figures that just on those movements, some simple pattern figures using the right-hand stars, the left-hand stars. Again, not very difficult. I stuck with what Brian said, but you notice up here on the top one, back out, circle left, boy, boy, girl, girl. Oh, just a little different. It does exactly the same thing what Brian did with take your corner. Or, you know, take the right hand or the corner lady and step up, make a line of four. All we're doing is getting there differently. Some more patter exercises, some singing calls. And you notice on these singing calls, every one of these swing your corner, you could also do an Alaman left from there. If you are going to finish with a star through instead of a swing your corner, do a do-si-do first. So in summary, what's important here to note is right at the very start, it's important that you build a relationship of trust with your dancers. They need to feel that they can trust you to give them a good time, to teach them what they need to know about the activity and have fun putting it into practice. It's crucial you do not teach something just to get there so you can use any particular movement or any particular song, only to have to go back and unteach it later because your shortcut was only for one situation. If you do it, you're going to lose your credibility. And believe me, another caller doesn't correct it. If another caller doesn't correct it, making your dancers think that you taught it wrong, then another dancer will. And that you will stick up for your caller, they'll stick up for their caller, and they find out you lied to them, basically, you're going to be diminished in their eyes. It's like Betsy was saying, use the right terminology at the beginning, and you're going to have a lot more success. Teach it right the first time. You don't have to unteach. It's vital that the dancers feel success and are able to do what they know and build on it. Take them from the known to the added to it all works together, and you'll be fine. You start with a small foundation and you increase on that foundation all the time. And if you do that, you're going to build wonders in your creative choreography. I use just this as an example. We do pass through, we do a courtesy turn, we do a right hand pull by and a courtesy turn. We do a ladies right hand pull by and a courtesy turn with the new man. We do a ladies chain. We do a ladies chain 3/4. Then we do a facing couples pass through and courtesy turn. Then we do a facing couples right and left through. We do a couples pass through and wheel around. Oh, wait a minute. That's the same kind of turn as the courtesy turn, but the hand's not behind the back. We do a couples pass through and we do a reverse wheel around. Well, we've already done circle left halfway, circle 4 left halfway. We've done circle 4 right halfway. We do a pass through. Once we get into something like that, we can do a pass through and cast off 3/4. And it's this progressive building of stuff they know and they're familiar with that they can take to the next level and add on to it and have comfortable. It complements what they know and it's familiar actions and familiar body flows so that the dancers do it comfortably. The dancers learn to be more comfortable and you'll be able to add logically to your repertoire. And if they dance and feel successful and use what they know, they're going to be happy with just a little bit of variety. If you try and start with cast off 3/4 ending in a chain down the line, and you don't have a foundation of courtesy turn, you don't have a foundation of a trade, you don't have a foundation of et cetera, the dancers are going to be daunted. They're going to be afraid of the complexity of that. And chances are they're going to rebel against it one way or another. But if you take what they know and you expand it slowly and slowly add to it, taking head couples right and left through, side and ladies chain, et cetera, it's going to be a simple progression for them. And for them as a dancer, and it's experience of something familiar and doable that takes them to new territory. Okay? Just remember, it's the callers that get bored because they think their boredom of using the same material means the dancers are going to get bored too. Unwary callers tend to push too hard or too fast. They use what is known with variety and they mix it up. They'll be fine. Don't push. It takes hard work, but it is worth it. And by the same token, as John Juergens was asking, how long do you explain something? That's the other side of the coin. If you take too long to explain something simple, it gets boring. And just as a final note, I want to just make sure that I clarify for everybody. This is not about any specific program. It applies to all levels of program, basic through challenge, whatever. It's not an advocation of basic or basic 1, basic 2, a condensed teaching order, SSD, or any of the other half dozen more new dancer programs that exist out there. This is just simple common sense about learning, achieving, and feeling proud that you can put into practice what you've learned. It's not even about square dancing. It's about learning that kind of stuff. Okay, so Ian, I've got a few choreographic submissions here. One is 4 ladies chain 3/4. So picture a static square. 4 ladies chain 3/4. Circle left, ladies in, men sachet. I'm not putting this up on Taminations because I have not figured out how to do ladies in, men sachet. But 4 ladies chain 3/4, circle left, ladies in, men sachet, ladies in, men sachet. Finish your circle left, you get back home, ladies chain across, men now have their corners, swing your corner and promenade, or you can do that ladies chain and just turn your corner and promenade. You can turn that right into a singing call.
Yes, Terminations wouldn't let me, when I tried to do the 4 ladies chain across, after when I did the ladies in, men sachet twice.
Yeah. I haven't figured out how to get ladies center men sachet while they're circling on Taminations.
Okay.
I only just figured out how to promenade on Taminations today. So, and that's only because I was talking to Brad Christie in another meeting and he told me you got to add the word home to it. promenade home.
Yes.
They promenade.
Right then.
Actually, I only got how to make them circle 4 3/4. Yeah, I only got that today. Well, that works. That works quite well. Innovation with new dancers, innovation with new classes is up to you. Holding them, making them entertaining, and selling the product is up to you as a caller. That's what you're there for. They're there to come and have fun and socialize. They're not there to learn technicalities and definitions. If you do your job right, they will build their own community. They will build the ability to understand. They will create their own foundations. They'll create that camaraderie and everything else that goes into making square dance. But if they have fun doing it, theirs is the success. Theirs is the knowledge. Theirs is the community. You're just the edge of a coin. You're the one that holds it together and gives it value. Floor is open.
I'm gonna speak up.
Please.
Part of the problem, I think, for somebody who hasn't taught before or hasn't taught a lot is if you practice calling and you're used to calling with a full program, such as mainstream or such as basic, that when you don't have the calls available that you're used to having, you can't think of anything but the calls you don't have. So all of a sudden, the whole dance experience goes down the drain because you're going, can't do that. Can't do that. And so you need to work on planning in advance what you can do with those calls and how you can move people around to make it feel like dancing.
Absolutely. When you teach a class, the first class you teach is always going to be the hardest class you teach. After that, if you get through the first one, you've got a format that you can tweak and improve on each time. But after you've done, I've taught a lot of classes in my day. I haven't taught a class in a number of years now, but I've taught a lot of classes. And I found that I spent probably 4 hours in preparation for every hour I was on the floor with my first class. After about 15 years of teaching and repeating this session, I was down to about spending an hour preparing for each class because I already knew what was going to be in my sequences and whatnot, but I still spent the time to prepare. What Betsy's talking about is what we call blue horse syndrome. It's like if you've ever gone to a caller school, and I know, Mike, you've run a caller school, you've run a caller school, 1 or 2 in your day. One of the common exercises in caller schools is you get callers up there and you say, right, I want you to use, swing through in your patter, but you're not allowed to use right and left through. Resolve. And of course, the only thing that's in your mind is right and left through because you're thinking about it from I can't use it. And of course, it's like telling somebody not to think of a blue horse. Think about anything except a blue horse. A blue horse is the last thing you should be thinking about. Well, of course, everybody's thinking about a blue horse. It's the same kind of premise, but with practice, patience, and hard work, it does become easier. The movements that I used in today's presentation are specific movements from a caller that has inherited a club and has said, I've inherited a new dancer club. This is where they're at, but I don't know what to do with this. I've got material, but how do I make patter and sing, with this? Because there's no material. I can't use this, and this. Well, the answer is hard work. There is some material out there, and there's enough material with those 16 movements to program a very, very good innovative dance.
Mel, one of the biggest problems today is excess ladies.
Yep.
What do you do when you have so many ladies come in and want to learn and we haven't got men to go with them?
I find that 90% of the time, and this is something that I've experienced a lot in Canada, and I know in the US, it's becoming even more pronounced. Ladies accept the fact that some of them are going to have to dance as a man. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer because most ladies are more than willing to learn how to dance as a man and to dance as a lady. Most men are not willing to dance as a lady until a little bit later on, and then it's kind of a gimmick, and then it's, okay, well, I'll fill in the square. ladies adapt more readily than men. The only advice I can do is say, let them make the decision for themselves. If you have 8 people sitting out because you've got 3 men and 5 ladies, and none of those ladies wants to dance as a man, don't force them to get up on the floor.
Oh, you can't.
And you know, I've seen that time and time again. Forcing somebody to get on the floor. Oh, come on, just fill in. No, I don't. I'm not coming. Oh, come on, we'll drag you through it. That's the best way to lose dancers. Let them choose. If they want to dance, they will dance.
You know, and Mel, when I danced in Japan, all the girls in Japan, they have a pocket in their back of their dress. You don't see it in the United States. They have a pocket. At a moment's notice, they can pull out a sash, throw it over their shoulder, and they're a guy.
Mm.
And I've danced many times at some of the parties over there, and I'm the only guy with 7 other women in the square. So it's just the way it goes over there because there's way more women than men. But it just it works out really cool.
I can't remember who it was I was talking to, but I think it was a couple months back. They had. Actually, it was more than a couple of months because we weren't down. Geez, my God, the time has flown. Almost 8 months back. Wow. Their problem was they had 3 times as many men as they had women in their club.
Yep, never had that.
Yeah, that's why it's stuck in my head. It's such an unusual occurrence. But like I said, all you can do is find the best way that you can. And the best way for you is what works for you. It's like when we were teaching resolution techniques. The best resolution technique in the world is the one that works for you.
Now, one of the funniest one-night shows I ever had was with a hall full of nuns.
Mhm.
You couldn't tell one from the other. They're all black and white.
That's a
I
bad
thought
habit to get into, Jeff.
that was
In
just,
Sweden,
you know
Sweden,
what?
the situation.
No, we have to acknowledge just how bad that pun was. You
I'm
can't.
sorry, Mel.
You have to acknowledge just how absolutely horridly bad that pun was. Go ahead, Helen.
I was just saying, in Sweden, the situation is the same. We have a lot of lady dancers, and very often people come as single dancers. When I started to learn, they said to me that, you know, if you girls dance as men, you'll dance all the time. And I immediately started dancing as a boy, and I was graduated as a boy. And actually that has helped me immensely, because very soon you want to dance as a girl, so you learn both. And now when I'm calling, I have no trouble following man number 1, because actually that's how I started to dance. So it's really helped me a lot. But I think a lot of girls will, you know, dance as a boy if you tell them that. It'll mean that they'll be on the floor a lot more than if they just, you know, stick to being the right-hand dancer all the time.
Mm. Yeah, the other problem we've got here, we're back dancing, but we're not allowed to have learners. We've only got to have club members or people we know. So you can't have strangers come in off the street and want to learn to dance, which is a big problem. It'd be nice if we could. Mm.
Just remember, everybody, this is not forever.
We hope so.
No, let's hope.
I'm going to throw this out there because it's the elephant in the room. There's been a lot of comments that what happened with coronavirus and the lockdown and everything else has been one of the best things that's ever happened for square dancing. And only for one reason. I'm just throwing this out there. That's not my opinion, but it's been said a number of times, and mainly because it's got callers to talk about calling. It's got dancers to talk about dancing. And a lot of us are looking at getting back to the foundation roots of why this is such a great activity. We've got an opportunity to make it back into something that is brand new. I shouldn't say back into something, but make it into something that is a brand new activity for a whole new crop of dancers, for a whole new crop of people that want to have something to grab onto when the floodgates open and everybody's looking for something to do. Nobody's able to do something. Let's try and get in on the forefront of this is a fun community activity that you can socialize with a group of people. It is an opportunity. Let's not take it as the curse that it is right now.
Let's
Well,
hope you
two other thoughts to go with that is, as a benefit, it's for those people who were really at the end of their dancing careers. This is a graceful out where they really didn't want to let go. They felt obligated, but they just physically or mentally couldn't dance anymore. This is a graceful out for them. The other thing is, a new way of looking at things is, instead of doing lessons in a group traditional setting, just get with another couple and teach all of those calls, as there's many, many, many of them that only involve 4 people.
Yeah, a lot of that's come to the fore with the virtual square dance or the 2-couple square dance as an activity. I just have this picture in my head that, you know, we're going to get to the next national convention, get 15,000 people, and everybody's going to be dancing as a single couple in a different part of the floor, doing their own part of Dance with Phantoms. If that's what it goes to, well, then that's what it goes to. But, you know, I don't see it. But you're absolutely right, Janet. There has been I don't know how many of you attend the dancer forums or the dancer presentations and Zoom discussions that go on similar to this with dancers. There's a lot of dancers that have said, you know what, I was actually getting kind of tired. I sort of, you know, it's a kind of good thing that this has happened because our club is folded and I really wasn't sure about going back. You know, we're thinking about moving somewhere else, and, you know, there's lots of other things to do. We're losing a lot. I personally don't think we're losing that much because our activity is bad. We've already lost most of the people that we were going to lose because our activity is bad. We're losing the ones that just don't care or can't anymore. And it's we, as the leaders and the callers and the teachers and the trainers and the people that are trying to be inspirational. It's up to us to put this back together. And we cannot do what we've been doing for the last 20 years and expect to get a different result than what we have right now. We've got to change. We've got to adapt with it. And starting new and doing it right is a good way of doing it. Well, that's a rather sour note and a somber discussion, but let's open the floor up for anything else. I threw out some movement there. I did have the list. I will post the PowerPoint presentation and the document by all means. If you want to take those movements and write some choreography and have me have a look at it, I'm more than willing to do. One of the things I noted in Don Beck's session this morning, one of the biggest things about the Zoom platform is, even in this audience, we've got a lot of new callers, journeyman callers, and really experienced callers. It creates a format where you can interact with each other. You can get together on a one-on-one or a 3-on-1 or a personal level. It's taken the ability for experienced callers to mentor new callers, to mentor journeyman callers, and add to that experience to increase your knowledge of the craft. So take advantage of it. You know, Brian's there. Brian is a very, very amiable teacher. I'm pretty sure you've done a number of one-on-one sessions with some of the local callers in your area, Brian.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I know Tom Miller has done a lot of one-on-one. Kip Garvey was in here earlier. I don't see his name on there, but I've got a bunch of names in front of me.
He's gone to play golf.
Yeah, Mike's, of course. Oh, he must have been going with Mike then, because Mike's gone to play golf as well. You know, there's an advantage to what we're doing here. It's not the advantage that we want to get to, but it's something that we can definitely take advantage of to get where we want to be, to when we have that advantage of getting back face to face. Practice, practice, practice. I've got about 40 videos to go through of recordings of people calling that they want assessments on. A lot of other callers do the same thing, and you can share amongst yourselves, practice with yourselves, get a hold of somebody else, you know, record yourself doing a singing call in your office or wherever you're doing it, and send it to another caller to say, what do you think? What can I do better? What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? I want an honest opinion. Take advantage of it.
I think the basic program is terribly underrated. I think
Absolutely.
fabulous program. And I've over the last few years, I've called quite a lot in Scandinavia in for Swedish conventions and things like that. And I must say that I am so impressed with the fact that they have basic dancing as one of the main levels that they feature at their conventions. They have usually at least 2 sessions of basic dancing. One is for people who have recently got into the activity, and others are for people that the dance maybe the plus and advanced programs, but they want to get down and do some of the basics in an interesting way. And I really, really wish we could do something like that in Australia. But I know that if we put on a basic session at one of our conventions, you'd hardly get anybody would go along to it, because they'd all think, oh, no, I don't really need to know this is my partner and this is my corner. You know, I'd really like to do something that's interesting. And there is so much you can do in the basic program. I just love the basic program.
It was one of the arguments, and I still haven't got an answer for it. In the development of the community dance program, in the development of the Club 50, the track program, the Sustainable Square Dance, and now the Social Square Dance program, there's always the argument, we need to get dancers in doing what they want. We need a good, easy to teach, easy, fun level of no more than 50 movements. And I made the argument that, well, we already have that. It's called the basic program, which has 50 movements in it, maybe 52, whatever. And it's a great program. It's an absolute thorough program. It's a fun program. And it says, oh yeah, but that's not what people are dancing. And what got me was, you're trying to get new dancers in. We have a 50 movement program for new dancers called the basic program. So we're going to create a new 50 movement program for brand new dancers, because that's what everybody else is dancing.
So I can answer some of that if you want.
I understand all this about it, but who is this SSD program is social square dancing? I can get up there and I can call a basic level dance with the basic program of a social square dance that is interesting, innovative, and challenging.
Nobody's disagreeing with that.
And all of that, as can many callers.
Yeah.
The 50 movement SSD program it's a wonderful program. It's got a lot of potential to it. But from my perspective, nobody's been able to explain why it's better than the basic program, other than it's too difficult for callers to
No,
call.
the main reason why we have some of the mainstream on there was because they were favorite calls of the people in Texas when they invented the Club 50.
Oh, yeah. No, I understand that. I had a long talk with Jerry Story about it.
And the other aspect of this is that in many parts of the United States, especially where I am, basics is not marketable. And it's not marketable when you get the established dancers involved. If we could keep everything isolated away from the established dancers, then no one would, I mean, you could call basics all day long and no one would care. Yep. But the fact that you have the established dancers in the area, you're doomed to failure, because they won't.
That again brings me right back to the question, who are we calling for? Are we calling for new dancers? No, we're not, because if we're calling for the established dancers, what we're doing is we're creating the biggest problem that we had right at the beginning, nonstop classes to get them in, because there's no market for new dancers. That's not a dancer problem. That's a caller problem.
No, well, I don't disagree with that totally, but I can tell you that, you know, I tried to do everything in isolation from the established dancers, and I couldn't, because what happens is when you start to create excitement in your own club or your own activity, those dancers start to reach out and look for other things to do. Well, because I mean, for instance, I could not call every night of the week for the beginner dancers. I'm a local caller who works for a living other than calling. So I just didn't have the time to do it every day. And that's my living. You know, Mike Sikorsky, when he was running programs in Orange County, he was doing it every night of the week. And, you know, he lived and breathed it, basically, is what he did. That's a professional caller who makes his living that. But most of us are not that way. Most of us are, we have either a real job on the side, or not, it's a real job. That's not, I don't mean to say
That's
that.
how you say that.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Hey, we have a different job, and the square dancing is more of an avocation than a vocation.
I understand it completely, Mike, and I
Right.
understand the frustration that newer callers, especially, that are trying to start a class and get going, that don't, for instance, call plus
Right, and then
now,
we're
because all they're doing is they're creating a feeding ground for poaching by the
yeah,
experienced. But
and
again, that's not the question. I understand the logic, I understand the mechanism, I understand the psychology of why.
well, I
My
answered the question.
The question itself is, who is that program for? It's not for new dancers.
The SSD program?
It's not for new dancers. It's a program that new dancers will have, but I can guarantee you once it gets up and running, it's going to become a poach program. I've already seen variations of the SSD program that says, oh, but we don't use that. We use spin the top, so I'm going to use spin the top in my program.
Well,
then
every
that's not SSD.
every
And
program suffers from that.
I know. And
problem.
that's not the question. What I was saying is we already have a really, really good program of basics. We don't need another basic program. What we need is a whole change of mindset across the activity of dancers and calls. And we all know that that's not going to happen. But that's a
It's
fundamental philosophical discussion for another time.
so the idea behind SSD was that basically mainstream was too difficult to teach in a reasonable amount of time. So what they've done is they've extended the basics a little bit. So we were including half of the mainstream list, and then the rest of the basics, all of the basics are there with the exception of a few calls. Like Do Paso isn't on there as an example. But it's basically the basic list with a few mainstream calls added to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is not to teach those figures in their entirety, but mainly focus on standard applications.
No, I understand. We, like I said, we had an entire, I think it was about a six-hour discussion on SSD.
Right.
With Jerry Story here.
Right. I watched him
It
give
was
the
the
talk.
question that came in. Who's that for? It was designed for new dancers, and it's a great program. Don't get me wrong. If it works, and there's a market where they can go and use it and dance with it, it'll be phenomenal.
Yeah, from my perspective, I tried to run just basic classes. And I had some ambitious goals. I thought, well, I can teach basic 1 standard application in 8 weeks. And then I can teach basic 2 standard application in 8 weeks. And then I would split off after the first 8 weeks, and I'd start the basic 2 class. I'd start another basic 1 class, and then try to churn it that way and get people in. And I ran into this problem of poaching, either self-poaching or regular poaching.
Yeah.
You know, from other clubs and everything. And eventually that sort of led to the downfall of the whole thing. But then Jerry was pitching the idea of doing Club 50 at the time. And then there was a caller, Charlie Robertson, in my area that was putting a lot of pressure on everything. And they basically were bad mouthing what we were doing. And so we kind of fell in line and sort of went the Club 50 route. And then that eventually morphed into the SSD program.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, in Southern California, I talked to associations and gave them arguments why what we were doing wasn't marketable and it was detrimental. We have both a recruitment problem and a retention problem. And, you know, when we pile so many figures and we don't even teach them properly on the, to the dancers, eventually there's going to be bad experiences created on the dance floor when they go out and hear some other caller who treats things slightly differently than another caller does. Absolutely. And they're not already properly trained. So we're just creating a situation to create bad experiences on the dance floor, and that translates to
that's exactly
lack of
what
retention.
I was saying in the presentation as well. It doesn't have to be complex, but one of the things that is missing in teaching is we say, we've got to get basic 1 in 8 weeks. We've got to get basic 2. We've got to get SSD in 12 weeks or 14 weeks, whatever it is. To me, that is an absolutely ludicrous approach to square dancing. My approach, and the most effective one that I would like to put out there, is get the dancers on the floor having fun and enjoying themselves, you can dance as much as you want. And they've got to have a time, they've got to have a target, they've got to have a point to get to, that they can use something that they can deal with, not just be a finish of, okay, that's done, now we're doing this, and it's on the same night. There's no transition. It's nonstop learning, it's nonstop classing. That is one of the biggest strong points of the SSD program, but the SSD program is still standing alone. Anyway, this isn't about a discussion for
Well,
SSD.
so, you know, I can just say that we learned a lot trying to develop the SSD program.
Oh, I know.
And some of the things that we learned were not what you'd expect. And basically what we learned was that callers from all over, well, we already sort of knew that they'd treat things differently, but there really wasn't a lot of foundation in skills that were common. I mean, basically somebody could be really good at teaching something or other, but really lousy at presentation, like you're talking about, or it could be just not understanding a concept that we were trying to get across. Like you had Jerry on talking about the idea of choreographic symmetry. Just explaining that is a pretty tough chore, but it's a very good presentation technique if you can latch onto it. But you know, everybody develops differently, and everybody's at different levels of expertise with different things. I have my weaknesses, and you know, they're out there to be seen by all, and too many videos. But the idea is that something like this, where we can come together and discuss things and start to realize that there is a weakness here. We need to learn a little bit about that. And if somebody is more experienced and willing to mentor somebody, that's great. And now I think with this COVID thing, there's a lot more access to that. So I applaud this effort. And the SSD program is just a line in the sand. It's trying to do something different than we have been doing, than what we were doing, because we all realized that what we were doing was not working. And so maybe the SSD program needs to be improved, maybe it needs to be minimized, but just trying to get people on the same page was a Herculean effort that took us 4 years.
Yeah. Understood.
So I think where it is now, I mean, it's better than what we had.
Up to others. You know, if you have comments, some of the new dances or anybody with different comment, like I said, it's an open discussion now, but if anybody has anything, but I'd like to hear some of the experiences of some of the new callers that may have only taught 1 or 2 classes and where they had some struggle points. And we'll just open the floor up.
Well, the one thing with all the different lists, all the programs, you know, they say this list has so many calls, this list has so many calls. I have a problem with that because for me, you turn back and backtrack, they're lumped together as one call, but they're totally different calls. So in my opinion, they're 2 calls. So the same thing for half sachet, roll away, and ladies in, men's sachet. That's all considered one call, but it's not. It's 3 separate calls. So when we say a list has so many calls, we're technically lying.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the SSD program is more like 90 to 100 movements. And but
one of the issues, that's always been the way, even in the old Caller Lab manuals, you have a call, but that's the list of the call. There's a family. But what was nice about it was the family of calls was broken up over time. So you may teach part of the family here, the rest of the family you may get later, and the rest of the family you may get later, but it's all part of the same family of calls. And that is, as you say, Jen, it's one lump thing. When we go into the standardization of calls, this is only from this formation, this is only from this formation. Regardless of what it is, if all you're doing is standard formations, I have no problem with that at all. All I can say is if you are going to teach a new class and you're using standard formations, go with, you know, what Betsy was saying and others were saying earlier. Make sure you use the right terms, you teach it properly. Don't take the shortcut for the sake of you as a caller to get that one movement in or to get that one singing call use in, and teach them how to do it from that one place only. Because standard position still has a lot of variety It's not just one Fazar. Standard position is a lot. What Brian said with take your corner and make lines, that's still standard position. Even though it's a girl, boy, boy, girl, it's still standard position line. It's
I
what you
think
do
there's
with the movement.
way too much emphasis on getting through the basic program quickly so that you can get to another program where you can dance properly.
I agree wholeheartedly.
The basic program is a fantastic program just as it is. And I have a mainstream club, and I'll occasionally decide just to call a night of basics, and the dancers don't know. Like unless I was to tell them tonight you're only dancing basics, they wouldn't know, because there's just so much you can do in the basic program that is interesting.
Yep.
And
I've seen colleges do that in advanced and challenge halls too.
Sorry, Mike. Mel, what was that?
I've seen callers do that in advanced and challenge halls as well.
You know, the trouble is a lot of the advanced and challenge dancers have trouble doing the basics. If you call a no paso or something like that they don't do in the advanced program. I have an agent in Sweden, Hannah Tenenbaum, and she has a really cute name for the dancers that dance the really high level, the sea level dancers. She calls them the sea monsters, which I thought was very cute.
When you're talking about teaching, I always thought teaching the definition was a good way for them to learn to dance. And during one of these Zoom sessions, somebody made a comment. I don't remember who made the comment, but they said, well, everybody dances by definition. It's just a matter of, does their definition match your definition? And that just really hit me. And I thought, I haven't taught enough. I've taught like 2 classes. So it's not enough for me to know whether those dancers are dancing correctly or not, because nobody's dancing right now. But that just hit me, that if they're not dancing the way I want them to, that I need to redo my wording or definitions.
Yeah, well, the dancing by definition, this was actually Kim Linder that put this one in, is the difference of saying, would you like 6 units of carbon, 12 units of hydrogen, and 6 units of oxygen? Or would you like to have some sugar in your coffee? And that's the difference between asking a question, understanding what's being asked, and understanding the definitions of what's being asked. The definitions should be provided to the dancers. I believe they should be. But teaching them, it's just like when you get a textbook in school, you can get a textbook. Absolutely. You need that textbook, but you still have to be taught what it means.
I'd like to hear Brian's approach to teaching a basic and then finding some way to relate what a dancer has in their common life to the way he teaches some figure.
Well, one of the figures that seems to cause quite a lot of hassle with dancers, and it's used in all of the programs, is square through. And it's one figure that I used to have problems with as well, with the dancers on the second hand wanting to do a courtesy turn. So it became a right and left through. And I was talking many, many years ago to a famous American caller, and he said he never has trouble with the dancers wanting to do a courtesy turn on the second hand because he teaches it half sashayed. And I thought, well, that's a good idea, because you can't do the courtesy turn if you're doing it half sashayed. So I started teaching the square through head couples half sachet and then square through, but then you end up with the problem that you have a boy facing a boy and a girl facing a girl. And I thought, well, that's not all that great. But then I realized that if I have my head men take my corner up to the middle and back, we have a half sashayed couple. If we now have that couple square through 4, we can go straight into a right and left grand, because you end up meeting your partner, or you can split the outside pair, go round 1, make a line of 4, and now you have a 0 line. So it's really, really easy if you start looking at the figures and ways to use them. If you have a 0 line, and you call just the ends star through, and then everybody circle to the left, you now have a boy, boy, girl, girl circle with everybody adjacent to their original corner. So you could now have just the ladies square through 4 and then swing original corner, or just the boys square through 4 and swing your corner and promenade. So it gives the dancers the opportunity to dance the square through both half sashayed and normal. And I find that was a really, really good way of teaching the square through. And I sometimes will do things like head couples do a right and left through, and if you want to, roll away. And then side couples do a right and left through, and if you want to, roll away. Everybody join hands and circle to the left. Everybody face original partner and do a right and left grand. And then you've got a circle where you might be meeting boy, boy, girl, girl, or you might be doing an ordinary right and left grand, or you might be doing a half sashayed right and left grand. But they're going to meet their original partner at the end of this. And it's just an interesting way of varying the basics so the dancers can get some fun out of doing some of this stuff that everybody thinks is just mundane, and we really should move on and do something different.
Yeah. I actually never thought about half sashaying them at the beginning, but I definitely do a heads, sides right and left through, heads right and left through, heads roll away, circle left till the boys are at home, and then I'll do our boys are in the head position, and the same thing, head square through, and do repeat it. So I've got boys working together, girls working together, both sides of that equation before I get them into couples.
Another thing about the half sashayed position for a square through is that it's very similar to right and left grand.
Correct. Yes.
When I teach the square through, if I give them a visual and tell the 4 dancers that they are standing on a tabletop with each one of them on a corner of the table, and they need to make sure that they go around the edge of the table and not fall off the table, they manage to turn the correct direction because they can physically visualize that tabletop that they're standing on.
That's great. Very good. Yes.
Yeah.
I want to add one more thing about teaching the definitions. We can teach the proper definition all we want, but part of what happens in the dancer's mind is they will process this, and they will clump actions together.
Yep.
So that actions that are there are, you can say right and left through is a right pull by and a courtesy turn, and it will be for the first few times they do it. And after the first few times, it is one movement for a lot of dancers, no matter what you said. And I'll go a different way on square through. Part of the reason people turn the wrong way on square through is because of the fact that they keep connection too long. And so the connection that they have on the right pull by actually takes the person on the right away from where they need to turn in. When they pull by with the left, it takes the person on the left away from where they need to turn in, unless they let go a lot sooner than I've ever seen them do. And I can stress it all I want. They got a hand, they hang on. It's like security. I claim that square dancing at times is an act of faith. You have to let go of what you have and believe there'll be somebody else there for you. And some people don't have the faith to let go of who you have, and they're hanging on for dear life. That's why on a right and left through, a lot of the times the lady will be pulled away from her partner for the courtesy turn. She's going to the right because that's the hand, and it pulls her right shoulder back. So I started square through as one hand at a time, and you only turn to continue and find the next person.
I found a little trick with this people learning right and left grand was teaching them to get the opposite couples together into a circle and do a wrong way grand, and they would get their hands coming in and keep making them tighter and tighter, and they would actually get to the point and say, "Oh, that's the whole thing. That's it." And the next thing you know, they got me. Your heads do a right and left, do a square through 4, and they're all going the proper way with passing the left shoulders and right shoulders. It worked pretty good with the ones that just a different way of teaching the situation. I've also got a book from one of my caller schools from Jeff Priest that he calls the Core 20 book, which has basic calls in it. It's got all the calls in it. He's got the basic, a mainstream, and a plus book. And I went through them and I made up a nice teaching program up where everything's synchronized from one call to the next. And it makes them learn it a lot easier. And then you just start mixing them up. And then they first night or two, they'll have a little problem, but after that, they just stop and think about it and it falls in place. It really helps make them learn the definition. But the Score 20 that they have, that he has in this book, once you learn those first 20 calls, it's easy to teach the rest of the calls if you seem to pick them up pretty simple.
What's interesting about these is what both of you are saying, which also we covered in the presentation a little bit, was dancers make their associations and they carry those associations forward into what they learn. One of the most powerful tools you have in teaching is to teach them something right the first time, associate it, add on to it. But one of the biggest failings in calling is exactly what Betsy was saying. You know, once you get right pull by and courtesy turn, they're going to associate that with right and left through forever and a day. What we fail to do as callers is we fail to do right pull by, you turn back, or pass through, courtesy turn, or those kinds of things, so that we keep them separate, because it's very easy as callers to get to that combination, forget that that basic movement stands alone. It was a really, really novel, like when I started in Europe, that was normal dancing. It didn't matter, you know, each movement was a movement. It was all part of a program they all built, and you had these massive programs. When I went back to Canada, it was a bit of a dancing culture shock to me, because there was a massive divergence in the levels of dancing ability of what was a club. This is where when we had this discussion beginning, where I was introduced to the concept of basic plus, which is basic and a couple mainstream, soft mainstream, hard mainstream, soft plus, hard plus, which I've never heard definitions of these levels, but I've actually seen dances advertised as soft mainstream or soft plus, which makes absolutely no sense. It did make sense afterwards. And when I moved to Australia, I was into another culture shock. And this came to the fore a few sessions back when there were several American callers and a Canadian caller that said, oh, well, we don't use reverse wheel around that much, and that's why nobody can dance it. Well, here, you know, very first dance I went to, I was dancing with Alan Kerr in Canberra, reverse wheel around and, you know, left this, and that was part of the normal mainstream program. That was everyday dancing. And it's such a divergence, which brings us, you know, it brings us full circle. The problem is not with the programs. The problem is with our ability to apply the programs effectively and usably. None of that reverse wheel around is non-standard. It's standard position. We don't use it, which is why it becomes a problem. Do passo is not a non-standard movement. It's a standard movement, but we don't use it. Box the net, same thing. A lot of people don't use it. That's where the problems lie. And, you know, we are in for some troubled times, but I truly believe that if we put our heads together and we all start speaking the same language, we have the potential for a great advantage of recreating this activity into something that, you know, it's not going to be a feeder that I'm going to do this till I die, and when I die, well, square dancing is going to die with me because there's nobody young coming up in it. Well, that got a resounding thud.
Yeah, Mel, John Casey here. When I was a full-time caller in the 80s and 90s, I was given a club by Eric Wendell when he retired from calling, when he was really sick, and it was technically a basic club because it was in the City Hall in Brisbane, and the dancers, anyone who was a member of the City 50 Plus, was eligible to go to any function. So you had new dancers coming every week because they were at another function at City Hall, and they would come into City 50 Plus, and they were eligible to come to the dance.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn to teach many different ways of doing the same movement, and that's where I got a lot of my basic knowledge. And I ended up teaching a monthly program where I organised with City 50 Plus management that I could take beginners once a month. So
yeah,
any month I would teach around about 12 movements, and each month those movements would be different. And so it works in well with what you were saying for this whole session today, that you can work a program around a few movements. And what I basically did was over 12 months, use all the basics in that 12-month period. And when people were good at it, I would invite them to my mainstream group.
Yeah. Like I said, that is one of the key criteria for success is when you come into a program, any lesson, I don't care what it is. If you're learning to be a plumber, you're taking lessons, you're learning the techniques, you're putting it all together, you're building on what you know. There is an end state where you get that, yes, I'm a plumber. Some people will pass, some people will fail, some people will drop out, other people want to be there. But if the activity is worthwhile, this is why taking a new dancer in every five days or taking a new dancers in every class is not a good idea. What you want to do is you want to present something that says, right, here's a series of classes for a short period of time. And then after that, if this activity is good, we're going to be here. You can come and join us with the next one. And if you keep that interest, they're going to come. That, to me, when I was talking with Jerry, was the biggest sale point of SSD, in that it has a start point, it has an end point where you can use what you've learned, and it has another start point that is short enough that if you're interested and you're having fun and you're doing it, you're going to bring people in and you don't mind starting again because it's not that long to go through. That's the biggest advantage of it. That's what basic used to be, you know, and I hate that term, well, we used to do this. That's what it was. That's why basic was a program. That's why mainstream was a program. Mainstream was the mainstream. Only the elite special few went up and danced plus, because, you know, that was for the tech. That was the same as going to school, but only the elite few went to university and became doctors, lawyers, and mathematicians. That was plus, you know, that's all changed. But we have the advantage of getting it back to that. And what you just said there, John, just illustrates that point. You can do a lot with a little and make it interesting that people want to keep coming into it. And they don't mind going back to learn a little. Just that little difference makes it happen.
So going back to something you said in the discussion there, Mel, you were mentioning that callers were really lazy in the past. And that's part of the reason why we are where we are with all this stuff.
Yeah, I think I need to qualify that. When I say callers are lazy, that's a generalization. It is very, very easy when I say this to say to a caller, right, here's the program, do this. Oh, well, we're not going to use the rest of this program because it's hard work to write material that says I'm going to use a split 2 around 1 to a line where I have, you know, boy, boy, girl, girl, or a boy, girl, girl, boy. Haven't done it, so I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to teach them relay to deuce because that's a wow move. That's what I mean about lazy. It's easy to just move on to the next, 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 and get your variety by using a whole bunch of different material poorly than using all the material you have well. That's what I mean. And it's just a generalization. It's not an insult.
Right. Well, so I'm not commenting on that part, but my observation and my experience has been that when I restrict myself and limit the number of calls, the creativity increases enormously.
Absolutely. That's the biggest advantage of teaching classes.
And if you're used to being, as Mel was kind of pointing out or hinting at, lazy with the idea of using the same sort of resolutions over and over again, but in order to do those resolutions, you have to have access to a larger number of calls. That's really kind of an illusion because if you're doing sight resolution, you may have the impression that you're able to call whatever you want from the seat of your pants, and that might be true to an extent, but the minute you begin to resolve, you must restrict yourself.
Yep.
Because if you don't restrict yourself, then you can't move people around to where they need to be so that you can resolve it. So we're already used to doing this restriction, but we're not aware of it, perhaps. So, you know, taking like the 15 moves that he gave or another 15 moves or even less than that, it does have a way of increasing your creativity. And if you just spend an hour or two, or, you know, I had a guy that taught me how to practice on the instruments, you know, say, how much do you think you can do every day? And I said, well, maybe half an hour. He says, well, if you can do a half an hour, then you can do 15 minutes. So if you do 15 minutes a day, but never miss it, that's what he wants. Never miss a day. So you need to write one module per day and just say, you know, get 5 minutes or 10 minutes per day or something, but never miss a day. And that will help you in the long run far greater than trying to cram for some dance and write a whole bunch of material at once.
I can really bring to the fore this example, but I may lose a few. Just out of curiosity, how many people in the chat window right now call challenge? 1, 2.
I don't make a habit of it.
3.
I'm capable.
Okay. Just follow me with the logic on this. Okay, so if I set up a static square and I say heads square chain through to a wave, jaywalk, spin the windmill right, Ferris wheel, boys square through 3 to a wave, all 8 recycle, girls square chain the top to a wave, just the girls mix, follow through to a right and left grand. Okay. Now that's got really, really nice flow to it. Now, if you follow the logic in that, I could get up there and I could call that and the dancers are going to go, wow. I want to say for the record right now, I know how to do the Ferris wheel and I know how to do the right and left grand. I have no idea what any of those other movements do. I have no idea what any of those other movements are. I have never even heard of square chain the top to a wave or jaywalk. Okay, I'm taking somebody's material. This is what I mean by callers are lazy. Now, that's really stretching the example, but it's very easy if we take that from that level and we go, let's just try something here. Okay, heads half square through to a do-si-do, swing through, girls run, couple circulate, girls cross run, bend the line, square through 3 to the corner, Alaman left. Great. Now I can actually follow that in my head, but that sounds really good. A brand new caller or a new caller would take that and say, right, that's a piece of choreography. I've done my dolls. I get up there and I call it, and I can string 20 or 30 of those little modules together, and they go, wow. And I will still have no idea as a brand new caller what that's actually doing. And this is why I stick to my guns when I say a lot of callers are lazy. It's very easy to get material. Everybody wants the module. Everybody wants to know, oh, I've got these 10 movements. What can I do to make it interesting? I put some choreography up on the slides today, and in the handouts that'll be coming, it'll be intaminations for you to look at, but that doesn't mean this is what you call. It's a guide. You can use it if you want, but it's to do the work. And teaching a class, as you very, very rightfully pointed out, Mike, is going to let you learn that material with the limitations on it. That is hard work. It is a lot harder to teach and call than it is just to call. Calling is hard. Teaching and calling is insanely hard. But it's well worth the effort. I see you nodding your head there, Betsy.
Yeah, well,
you were laughing at my C1, were you?
No, that was pretty formidable. Actually, I would think that a lot of it stacks so many calls together that you'd lose a lot of floors anyway.
I just, while I was talking, I clicked over on Vic Cedar's website and took something in the easy list.
Yeah, I'm glad Vic thought it was easy. Uh,
I have no idea. Like I said, I knew what the Ferris wheel was and I knew what the right and left grand was. The rest of it, forget it.
But anyway, what I was going to say is part of the thing that makes it hard these days is the ease of working with choreography programs to develop your choreography, where you don't actually push the checkers, you don't understand what you're doing, and it's all there for people to get. The other thing that can be a problem is teaching the cliches.
Yes.
Like when I'm teaching, I make it a point to never teach lead right and circle to a line in the same night. I never teach swing through and boys run in the same session. I need to know other ways to get out of those out after those calls without teaching the cliches, because the dancers will not learn where one call starts and one call stops.
Yep. That's where I was getting at when we talked about, you said right pull by and courtesy turn. Nothing wrong with it, but if you only build the association or the cliche, that's what they associate, you know.
I really think that's important. I make a point of not calling the cliches that are in my region for sure. And that translates to angels getting upset sometimes.
Yeah.
But
True.
you know, they're there in class and they're there that I try to provide opportunities for them to learn and still not feel stupid. And
One of the things I like doing is all getting a circle to a line is a great example. When you have one couple half sashayed, have your inside couple half sashayed and call circle to a line. It's perfectly standard and normal for dancing that movement. You define who breaks. The person that's actually going to break and do the turn under the raised arch is absolutely normal for them, but it will feel so very different for the dancers. You know?
yeah, I wouldn't call that a standard application, but
I'm just using that as an example. If you do something along that line, that's not a hard variation. Now, if I was going to use that, that would be pretty much my theme for the night. That would be the movement to get. I wouldn't do that. I might do that in my workshop tip, and then I'd use it periodically through the night. But if I was going to use something that was non-standard like that, that would be it for the night, the theme. The rest of it would all be, you know, some pretty clever, some pretty interesting dancing, good variety, but pretty standard stuff. And this is where we make mistakes. We got, you know, oh, the dancers, they may have picked that up really well right at the beginning and got it fantastic and said, well, they got that. Well, let's try, okay, we're going to do a spin the top from an Alamo wave. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, what are we going to do here? Okay, well, I can write a piece of choreo. Now, we all know that that's a no-no, but can we do it? Of course we can. We can do anything we bloody well want. But what I'm doing is I'm adding that level of complexity, that level of stuff, because they got it fast. I don't want them to get bored. They're not bored. You're bored. You know, they're not, they're dancing. They're taking your product. And if your product is to say, well, they got that, well, I'm going to give them more. 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 That's what I mean by being lazy, because it's very easy to give more. It's very hard to give less and make it fulfilling and make it worthwhile. I would rather them walk away from the table sated, wanting a little more and wanting to come back for another meal, than so full that all they can do is sit down in front of the TV with their hand down in front of their pants and fall asleep and never come back to another meal because, oh my God, I don't want to go through that again.
Hey, Mel.
Yes, Cece.
This is Cece. One thing that I went to Colors College this last summer, well, the summer before last summer, and Jerry Junk, when the class that he did on how to teach, one of the things that helped me in my second or my third round of teaching lessons was when I was teaching a call, I would say begin call, and we would start the call, and then at the completion of the call, end of call, to differentiate where it stops and starts, even though you continually dance, but when you're teaching it, it starts here, and then as soon as they complete the call and they're in that footprint or that handhold, end of call. And it really helps solidify some of the moves with a lot of the dancers.
That's Jerry Junk, was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would
It's a
just
common
go-
exercise. The one that I had, which was very similar, and they said they got this from Jerry as well, was it wasn't you just say start call, end call. What they would say is static square, head square through, 8 chain 4, square through. And they'd finish it, and you'd say what the start position or start formation was, what the end formation was, then you'd make the call. And then the next caller would have to go 8 chain 4, ocean waves, swing through. You know, it's the same kind of thing. As it's probably another one of Jerry's exercises, and it is an excellent exercise to go through because it really puts into your head what the dancers are doing.
Well, he actually said to teach the dancers that when during lessons, not the formations that they start, but
Oh, sorry,
so they're in this.
You do that with your dancers, do you?
Yes. So
okay.
when I'm teaching the call, like if we're doing the scoot back, okay, we begin the call, and then when you hit the end, you say end of call. That's the end of scoot back, and reiterate what the name of it was that you just taught.
Yeah.
So
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. I thought you were talking about callers, teaching callers. And you're teaching callers teaching callers how to call and how to teach. Yeah. Excellent comment.
Mel, I've just used well done at the end of it. And then they're getting acknowledgement, they're getting praise. They know that's the call before I go on to the next one. Just something on earlier, you were talking about females, having too many females, which we've all had. I haven't really found that too much of a problem because if you talk to the people the right way, they'll choose. I had one couple that came together, 2 girls came together, friends. One had a foot injury, and I just had a chat to him and I said, well, have a think about learning the left-hand dancer. Because of your foot injury, the men don't do as many twirls and less. It's up to you. Just let me know next week. And she came back next week. I want to learn left-hand dancer, and my friend be the right-hand dancer. And I can't see the point of teaching 12 females, and once they graduate to mainstream, they've got no one to dance with.
Yeah, but Roz,
why spend all that time and lose
say
it?
that out loud, Roz, because it
can't hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. I said you weren't supposed to say that out loud. That's a secret that's supposed to be kept among lady callers. I was made privy to that about 10 years ago, but lady callers.
Oh, which bit?
Don't let men know that they actually don't do anything in the square most of the time. The women do 90%.
Oh, sorry.
Say that.
Oh, okay.
And actually,
and also with
go ahead.
Yeah, also with teaching as I've gone through, I usually find about halfway you get the ones that really get it, the ones that are mediocre, and some that'll never get it. And I ended up quite a few years ago, I actually would bring in new learners in. I'd say to the ones that were struggling, look, we're going to do a new learner session. It's going to get a little bit harder from now on. I think you'd really benefit from going back and doing it again. You'll act as angels for the new dancers and get them to repeat. And the others I push on to what I call an intermediate, where they carry on and finish the mainstream. And I haven't had anyone drop out by saying it. It's how you say it.
Absolutely. Like I said, one of the clubs that I called for, the Mississippi Squares, I had 2 couples. One of them was really, really struggling. We did a lot of after and before sessions time, and but the other couple, they would not get it. You know, I could tattoo it on the inside of their eyelids and poke holes, and they still wouldn't see the light. And I could not, the club says, oh, well, we've got to give them a graduation certificate and all this other. I says, no, you can give them a graduation certificate, but I'm not going to sign that. And I talked to them and they knew they weren't getting it. And they came back, they took 3 sets of classes. They're still with the club. They're still dancing. Some of the ones that got it very easily are no longer dancing. They're still dancing with the club. They enjoyed it. I cannot stress it enough. Not everybody gets it the first time or even the second time. And it's okay to fail somebody. But as you said, Roz, how you say it is what's important. It's not necessarily your failing. It could be their failing. But as long as you make it an activity that would be welcome and give them options and you've tried your best, keep your head up. It's not for everybody. Just like taking physics is not for everybody, or becoming a welder. It's a great skill to know how to wield a hammer and nail, but not everybody wants to be a builder. You know, some people only want to be able to tack that little tiny nail to hang the picture up to be told that it's crooked by their wife, you know.
I'm also looking forward to trying the SSD program because then I'm not really having that problem of that struggling bit. I'll have that program, which is not only doing basic positions and not doing all the moves. And some people may just want to stay in SSD. Some people just want to do that. They don't want the complicated.
Not the 4th of July.
Yeah, the SSD program itself.
That's that guy up.
Sorry, what was that, John?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the SSD program itself is a great program. Don't get me wrong in that. But so is the basic program and the mainstream program. They're both great programs. My concern with the SSD is if you are going to teach your dancers the SSD program, give them a place that they can go and use it. Make sure you invite other clubs to come and dance with you. Make sure if you're going to have a caller visit, so if Jeff's going to come down to your club and call a dance, he knows it's an SSD program and you go over with him what's on the list and what's not. Don't assume just because, hey, Betsy, I know you're an accredited caller coach and you're a fantastic caller. I want you to come and call for my club on Tuesday. Oh yeah, I can fill in for you, great. And I didn't tell her it's an SSD club and she's up there, head square through, swing through, spin the top. What? You know, because that's not on the SSD program.
I've actually gone to clubs to call a dance because in the States, you know, you get hired as a guest caller and they've invited their class. And I arrive and they say, oh, we've invited our class. And my statement is, that's great. What do they know?
Yeah. So that communication is absolutely fair. I actually, don't get me wrong, I'm not a proponent and I'm not an opponent of SSD. I don't promote or criticize any of anybody that's going to be out there to take the time to teach dancers and teach others to come in and have fun and enjoy this activity. Fantastic, wonderful, whatever program. Just make sure they got a place that they can go, that they can see the start point, they can see the end point, and they can use what they know and have fun doing it.
So,
you'll have a lot of work ahead of you trying to get others. It's not you. You'll have a lot of work ahead of you trying to get other dancers and other callers to accept the mindset that this program does work, but this is all it is.
You know what I notice works also is when I'm teaching the call, like right and left through, right hand to right hand, next person left, right hand behind the back, courtesy turn. And then when they do the dance for the next 2-3 weeks, they're reciting these moves to their head, and then they give them the initials R, P, T, TC. Right, pull, that courtesy turn. And it sticks in their head. They know the move. And it works pretty good. And then when you do another call, and before you know, you hear them mumbling it as they're doing the call, and they learn them pretty quick.
You just have to be careful with some of the expressions that you use. I know I went down to Adelaide to Jeff's club. I was filling in for him for a few weeks, and he was on the floor and teaching right and left through. And I had this joke that I used: right pull by, left hand join, hand in the middle for back, and I say, "That's above the belt, Jeff." And when I call, the whole club goes, "Above the belt, Jeff." That's not true, but I like picking on Jeff anyway. Mike, you had a comment there.
All right.
Mike,
Well,
how?
I was just going
Hey,
to say that the SSD program without sustaining infrastructure, without sustaining dances, is totally worthless.
Yeah, any program without sustaining dances is worthless. That's what I said. The basic program is a worthless program in many parts of the world. It is an absolutely useless program because it does not exist.
Yeah.
The mainstream program in many parts of the world is absolutely useless because it does not exist. It's just a stepping stone of endless classes to get to the Plus Club. There are a few areas, and I've had talks with a few callers that they've got up to 15 clubs going. They're teaching new classes, but there is not one basic club. There's not one mainstream club. There is not one mainstream or basic level dance.
No.
There's plus clubs and plus dances. So there is no such thing as a basic program or a mainstream program in those areas. It does not exist. And you're absolutely right. If it doesn't have a sustainable and usable destination that they can feel successful about, hey, I did this, I can go somewhere and I can do this, then it's worthless. That's an excellent comment, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, SSD to me is still a stepping stone to mainstream as per the basic program is a stepping stone to mainstream. And
Yep.
I could ask all you callers out there, the basic programs, the teaching order that's suggested by Caller Lab, do you all follow that religiously? And I would say all of you say no. You all have your variations on it.
Yep.
So SSD is just a variation of the final goal of mainstream.
That is where I have to differ with you, Roz. SSD was not designed as a stepping stone. Even in the social square dance, or sorry, in the sustainable square dance program, what it is a standalone program. You could change the words. Instead of calling it square through, you can have change it to round up. Instead of right and left through, you could call it, a pigeon curl. And then it would suddenly be an entirely standalone program. That's what SSD is designed for, to stand alone.
I think we might have been better if we had done
Hang on a
that.
second, Mike. It's not a program that is designed for this, but you and probably about 300,000 or 400,000 callers, if we have that many around the world, which we don't, are all looking at it as the same way. Oh, we haven't been square dancing a while. This is a great chance to get new dancers on the floor so we can get them all dancing mainstream and get them up to our plus. That's not what the program was designed for, but I can guarantee you probably about 80% of the people that are going to switch over to it, it's a fast way to fast track square dancing back to fill the clubs and go back to where we were in the first place, which is where the problem is. It's not a program. Even in the SSD program, it says, this is the program. It stands alone. If you're going to teach spin chain through, if you're going to teach spin the top, that's a workshop movement for a night. It's a throwaway movement. It's not a, here it is, let's learn the rest of the mainstream. They are two separate programs, but I can guarantee, and you're not alone, Roz. I've heard that by a lot of people, and I've heard that I don't use those movements in my area. We're going to use these movements. Well, then it's not SSD. That's what it boils down to. That simply.
Well, SSD, at least it's standardizing that these are the movements you've got. So if anyone's doing it, they can. But if at the moment with basic, as I said, every call is different the way they teach. So if you actually said this is a basic program,
I think if you
you've
look
still
at
got
the
the same
SSD
problem.
program, although the SSD program has a series of class nights and a structure and whatnot, I've got to stress it. That is a guide. It's the same with Caller Lab has a program that is a guide to teaching. They have a suggested teaching order. That is a guide to teaching. They have a complete set of lessons plans, what to teach what night over the 40 weeks in the caller text. That's a guide. You don't have to follow it. Betsy, I believe you use a condensed teaching order of your own, which is modified somewhat, but you get through it. It's still a guide to get to where you go. Not everybody that's using the SSD is using religiously the material that is presented in the SSD program. They may want to slide through onto the first night instead of the second night. You know, they may want to teach star through somewhere later on in the program. It's those kinds of things. It's a guide for you as a caller. But the idea is at the end of that 12 or 14 weeks that you have, you'll be able to dance all the movements on that program from what is classed as a standard application position. And it's exactly the same with the basic program or the mainstream program. When you graduate, you should be able to dance all of those movements from the standard application position, and you should be able to dance a couple of the extended variations. And even in the SSD program at the end, they have extended applications. It's not a limitation, it's extended applications, and it's still the SSD program.
It's
So,
you know, extended applications are viewed as dance or workshop material. It's not something that we'd expect you to teach at the class.
that's right.
And
And it's exactly the same in the basic and the mainstream program. I wouldn't, you know, an extended application, that's why I use circle to the line as an example. That is part of the definition. That is part of the dance. But if I was going to do that, I would workshop it first, the same as I would do in an SSD program if I was going to be doing, no, can't even think of a movement off the list right now. One of those moves, I was going to be doing flutter wheel as an example, or reverse flutter wheel, or Dixie style, and reverse Dixie style.
I mean, one of the problems with square dancing today and for a number of years has been it takes too long to learn it.
Why? And I disagree. I totally disagree with that. That has never been a problem with square dancing, that it takes too long to learn. And I totally, absolutely disagree with that. And I say that. It does take a long time to learn. One of the problems with square dancing is we don't make it worth taking the time to learn. I've gone to clubs where they dance 2 years before they graduate basic. And those clubs are full and they're fun and they're getting new dancers all the time. It doesn't take them too long to learn. They're always trying to bring in, they want to go back so they can bring their friends into it. And the caller that teaches those had to say, well, we have to get to a certain point. We'll start a new club next year. They don't care that it takes 2 years to learn basic, because they've got a product that they want to have. The reason it takes too long to learn is because we're not selling a product that's worth learning in 2 years. We're selling a sound bite, and we want to get there so fast.
Yeah.
In Sweden, we take 1 year to learn basic. This is the standard length of time it takes. Of course, there are maybe some clubs somewhere that tries to do it faster, but it takes a year to learn basic. And when we were talking some other Zoom lesson, I got a question in the chat. Why does it take 1 year? And well, the answer is because we expect our dancers to be able to dance half sashayed and from different kinds of positions, not just the ordinary, very ordinary standard, but we take them through all the different positions when they're dancing their basic in the first year. So that's why it takes a year, because you're
there's also another aspect to that, Helen, in that it takes that long because you want them to be able to dance. But once they're dancing that, and while they're learning to dance that, they have something that most places don't have. They have a place to go and use what they know. Your club can go over and visit Lass's club. Your club can go over and visit, you know, other clubs that are teaching and dancing and taking a year to learn this and have fun. When there's a big festival on, there's a place for them to go and feel that they're part of this activity in their hall. And it may be everybody in that hall. And then there's a dance specifically for them. Very few places have that because the economics aren't there anymore.
We even have a basic 34 dance around the Christmas. We start in maybe beginning of September, and then before Christmas we have maybe a basic 28 or a basic 34 dance. And that's why, although we maybe teach things in a little bit different order, we have to make sure that by the time this basic 34 dance comes, we have to have taught them all the first 34 calls so they can dance this dance. And then a little bit later, we maybe have a basic 40 dance so that all the clubs can send their basic 40 dancers to be a part. And we usually have a dance, maybe it's basic 40, mainstream, basic 40 plus, basic 40. So every second tip, they'll be able to dance every second tip.
Yeah, and that's why the programs work.
Yeah.
What we don't have is
why don't you do that? Why don't you do that?
It's not a matter of why don't you do that. It's a matter of this has been the reality of what's been happening with the activity. And this comment about, and this is why I said I so strongly disagree with what you were saying, Roz. What you're saying is absolutely true. Don't get me wrong on that. What you said is absolutely true. It takes too long to learn, but the reason it takes too long to learn is it takes too long to achieve what am I learning? It's because you're not learning something to get to a goal to use what you can. It takes so long to learn because you can't learn basic because there's no place to go to learn basic. So once you finish basic, you've got to learn mainstream, but there's only maybe 2 dances a year you can go to at mainstream. So you've got to learn plus. Now you're into your 2nd and 3rd year of learning, and you've forgotten half the basic before you're able to go to your first, I can go to a dance and dance every tip. That's why it takes so long to learn. And that's not the dancer's fault. That's not the dancer's attention span. That's the caller's fault. We as a caller, all collectively over the last 30 years have allowed that to happen. Somebody else started making a comment in there. I didn't see whose light was flashed there, but.
Can I ask Helen something? Helen, with your basics, if they take a year to learn, how do you go when you're halfway through and new people want to come in?
Well, that's the terrible thing. We only start lessons once a year. That's the awful part about it. And if someone comes for a month and then they're sick for 3 or 4 weeks, well, come back next year. And that is really the downside of this. Definitely.
Yeah, that's where I found the problem.
Yeah, we have discussed trying to. Excuse me?
If they do go away for whatever reason, or halfway through the year they want to come and start dancing, do they come back when the next class starts generally?
Some of them do and some of them don't. We try to keep contact with them, and it depends on how interested they were. We have been thinking about, and another thing is when you sort of you're getting advertising for people to come, it's difficult to say, oh, it'll take you a year before you're finished. We've thought about saying have a 12-week or 8-week course. And of course, they don't know when they start that after 8 weeks, they won't be anywhere near graduation. They won't be able to go to a dance. And then after 8 weeks, we can say that, okay, now this first course is finished. There's a second course starting next week. Would you like to continue? And this way, we're thinking that maybe the ones that really weren't up to it will say, okay, 8 weeks is fine. This isn't for me. I won't continue. And then the people who actually, of course, love it and want to continue, they will continue. But it does mean that there'll be no new dancers because the clubs can't sort of manage a new course every 8 weeks. So that is the big problem.
We actually had the same because it takes so long. We kept names, we kept in contact, and then we started our new learners, and we actually had 12 people on the list, and we didn't get one of them because after 12 months, they've gone on to something else and we've lost them. So they were interested, but because we take so long to teach, we can't bring them in and we lose them, or we lost these. Yeah. And ours is a small club and we can't afford to lose that many. We're only 1.5 sets.
Yeah, in one of the clubs where I call, we have a new class, even if there's only one new beginner, and we had that 1 year. And of course, she learned pretty quickly because she has 7 angels and she was quite good at it. But we always, if there's one new beginner, we'll have a new class. Other clubs, they say, we need 3 or 4 or 5 before we have a beginner's class, a basic class. But we try to take everyone we get because we need them.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a balancing act. You're not going to win every battle. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality. I maybe I'm an eternal optimist. I would love to believe that if we present our activity in such a way that it becomes desirable again, that they'll come to us. And I would love to be able to say to everybody that's still in this room, wouldn't it be nice if when COVID is over, we get so many people coming that we have to all quit our jobs and call 5 and 6 nights a week because we got so many dancers. I don't see it happening, but I also look and I see people like Mike Sikorsky and Tony Oxendine and Jerry Story and Betsy Gotta that are sitting there and saying, you know what, this is what they do for a living and they made a pretty good living at it. We can get there again.
Well, I did have a day job
I know,
for many years.
but you were also calling 5 and 6 nights a week too.
Yeah, I had two full-time jobs for a while.
I played, when I was in Canada, I played soldier for a living and I was on shift work and I had to balance the shifts and everything else. And I was still calling 5 or sometimes 6 nights a week. You know, if I made as much money calling square dancing as I did being paid by the military. It was great. Mind you, I made more money in one summer cleaning out barns full of cow poop and horse poop than I did the whole summer calling both square dancing and being in the Army, but that's a different story.
And talking about when COVID is over, one of the things we may have is a reaction to have been because of people having been isolated. They may be looking for something to do that's social.
Yeah.
And if we can bring them in, then that's our opportunity to help restart the square dancing the way we hope it would be.
I was saying that earlier. I said that we do have an opportunity. Everybody's going to be looking for something and the floodgates are going to be opening. If we can get ourselves marketable and marketed as something that is worthwhile, that is fun, that is community, that is social oriented, not just, you know, for the old folks, or I'm too old to line dance, or I'm too young, or I want something for my kids or my grandparents used to, but something that is fun for everybody, you know, age 6 to 96, whatever, however you want to market it and do it. We have an opportunity here. Let's use it.
Something else that we've learned through this is the actual you doing it through things through Zoom. So I could envisage that in the future it would be possible, say if we're talking about basic dancers, that if you have 3 or 5 clubs, it doesn't need, I mean, it could be in Sweden, it could be in Europe. I think maybe because of time changes and that kind of thing, you could hook up and you could have a really good basic dancer. We could get Brian Hotchkiss to call for a basic 34 dance, and he could be calling to different rooms in different countries. I mean, it would be possible.
There are a few that do that right now. Jaden Frigo does every now and then dances internationally on Skype. I don't know if the technology for Zoom is there for both calling and presenting. In some people, they have it set up that it'll work, but in a lot of cases, you need some different equipment. But you're absolutely right. Calling online and online presentation, there's a few clubs that have done that. They've got a big screen TV and they've got a camera which focuses on it. You can only grab 2 squares off the front floor, but they've done big dances like that where the caller is on the big screen TV.
Yeah.
It looks weird when you have a giant head calling to a square, but
in the north of Sweden, we don't have many callers, so there are some clubs that only they use tape or well, not tapes nowadays, but they don't have a live caller. And for them, it would be fantastic if they could every now and again have a live caller calling. And in that case, the clubs aren't so big. It would be just 1 or 2 squares, but they'd actually be able to feel what it felt like dancing to a caller, not just the same material every week, that they begin to know what's going to happen next. So I think that's something that we've learned from this.
well, seeing how it is Halloween, I can say one thing. It is always better to have a live caller than it is to have a dead caller.
Boo.
Yeah, you thought Brian Hotchkiss was the only one with really, really bad puns.
What troubles me is we think alike.
That would trouble you. It should.
I'd like to mention also that If you have any doubts, and I'm not trying to sell SSD either, although many people who know me think I am, I think it is a way that we're going to get back into square dancing after the pandemic is over, with any luck. It's going to be one way that we can get people in and get them to bring their friends after they've had their 12 lessons or whatever it is. It's going to be helpful in that respect. And I know that Jeremy Butler did a great class video on SSD and how to sell it. And in that, he mentioned that he had his SSD sessions for an hour and a half. And then after that hour and a half, he actually had a 1 hour SSD dance. And that was every club night for the SSD. And the first 2 or 3 sessions or lessons of SSD, of course, he did whatever they had just learned to kind of cement it in. And I think that's one way to do it, rather than hoping that a club will put on an SSD dance once a month or once every 6 months or whatever it might be. You already have a destination. If they come in for the, hate to call it a class, but you come in for the SSD learning sessions for the first hour and a half, and then the next hour, those people are welcome to stay for the dance. And the dance can be, if they've gone through all the 12 sessions of SSD, it can be quite a considerable dance, because you've got 50 calls to go with.
There's a couple of callers in the States that are doing a very similar thing with SSD. Well, they were doing it with the sustainable square dance, but what they would do is the same kind of thing, that the evening was 4 hours in length. And what they'd have is the class, which was an hour and a half. They'd have the lunch and the supper, and then they'd have an open dance, which of course would be the SSD dance, which was, it wasn't a club, it was just an open square dance at SSD. And they didn't advertise, it was just an open square dance. All square dancers welcome. And that's what they would do. And again, like I said, SSD itself has a lot of phenomenal potential if it's got somewhere to say, I came, I learned, I know how to do this, I built on what I know, now I've got a place I can go and use this and have fun in a social community and get away from the classes and just enjoy life for a while. I want to take a year off and go backpacking through SSDville instead of always going to university. I want that gap year.
Yeah. I would agree also with what you said a little earlier, that SSD will be great if it's not used as a poaching ground for the pre-pandemic clubs and pre-pandemic dancers.
That's the mindset that has to be changed across the whole square dance community. In particular, the dancing community in the States, mainly because in the US, you're mainly club driven and club directed and club organized and club run. So that's going to be dictating who hires, and it's going to take a lot of backbone and a lot of inner fortitude and strength for callers in the US to say no.
I agree. I think the SSD clubs are going to really need to be caller run clubs to get away from club culture that we've had in the US and the UK and all over the place as regards to all the things that are wrong with clubs where they want to have to, let's go to a higher level and everything else. The SSD club needs to be run by the callers, and the callers need to rein in the Let's Go Dance mainstream, Let's Go Dance plus. They just need to forget about that.
Yeah, well, my big thing is I don't care what level you dance. I just know that if I'm in a basic club or a mainstream club and I'm calling, the last thing I want is a caller or another dancer to come and say, oh, you got to come and learn, come and dance with us at the fun level. We do plus. Or come and dance the fun level. Well, I'm sorry. Night one should be the fun level. Every night should be a learning experience, an entertaining experience, a fun experience, and an outright experience in its own. Ladies and gentlemen, it is 10 to 12 here. We're covering a lot of topics. I'm more than willing to leave the room open if people want to discuss things, but my wife was down doing wedding invitations for our daughter in March, which hopefully will be back and able to have a wedding. So I haven't seen her much this weekend. But if you have any specific comments or anything you want to make, or if you want me to leave the chat room open, I can leave it open. But I'm going to have to pull pin here and go and join the real world.
I want to say, just to finish, one thing we need to teach your dancers that exist right now is not to use the phrase "when you graduate and become a square dancer."
Yeah, oh yes, absolutely.
But so many people do.
I think Mike Sikorsky hit the nail on the head when during the session. He said it's usually that very first class, about the third tip, about the second or third time they promenade home, that they realize they're square dancing. It's them that will decide when they're a square dancer. It's not you as a caller. It's them that decide. And when you see that light come on, you know you've got them hooked.
Yep.
Yep. Thanks, Mel. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you, Mel.
My pleasure. Once Mark posts the video up, I will get the notes pages, the choreography, and the PowerPoint presentation up there as well. As always, if you wish to have a copy of it emailed to you, just send me an email and I will send them out to you as well.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
Cheers.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.